to all of the night's action. You're tuned in to VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Patrick Meagher, Dustin Swedelson, VSiN Live.
To the snubs, Mr. Torrey's Indiana team does not make it. We do have from yesterday's special here on Mad Dog Sports Radio. I'm sure you guys have heard it all day, but I have yet to hear the clip. I'm excited to hear it. We've got Dog and Torrey going at the chair AD of the committee, who also happens to be the athletic director there at North Carolina. North Carolina, it is a travesty that they're in this tournament. We'll get into why coming up in just a little bit. But we've got a ton to do as we open up a new week here on VSiN Live. Dustin Swedelson, I'm Patrick Meagher. Of course, Naya back in New York City. Ryan Smith running the YouTube page. We're on YouTube.com/VSiN Live, Rumble, Twitch, Kick, and a couple of cool things just to let you know. One, VSiN's running a contest that is going to pay out $5,000, and it's completely free to enter. So you can go to VSiN.com as far as the bracket contest. Again, completely free, going to pay out $5,000. Why wouldn't you get involved? And then also our VSiN.com YouTube page has previews for every contest coming into the tournament. So plenty of content over at VSiN.com and on our VSiN Live YouTube page. So make sure you check that out. We've got Greg Campy, who's been a friend of the show. He is the head coach, 41 seasons at Oakland University, and they lost in the semis to Robert Morris, who's in the tournament in the Horizon League. Remember, round of 32 for Campy in Oakland last year, a heartbreaking loss in overtime to NC State, or would have ended up in the Sweet 16. He's had a miraculous run at Oakland University. Again, let me repeat, he's been there for 41 years, and he's one of the great guys. He's been coming on the program for a while. We joked when they got bounced in the semis that it opens them up to come back on the show. I prefer they continue to play Oakland University, but the Golden Grizzlies head coach Greg Campy is going to join. And also coming up on the program, Jim Root, three-man weave, and the athletic college basketball writer, one of the best to do it when it comes to college hoops. So we'll get some college basketball plays and talk about the tournament as the brackets are set. We do have NFL news just quickly on this. The Bengals are the stupidest organization of all time. So they're going to pay T. Higgins 4 years, $115 million, and Jamar Chase 4 years, $161 million. That's on top of what they're paying Joe Burrow. The reason they're stupid is when Jefferson and all the other big wide receivers were getting their deal, they could have just extended Chase. They could have cut the charade out with Higgins because, remember, every single year the market resets. So they just kick the can down the road like they're Franklin Pierce, and they're just paying these guys more than they should be paying them. And my guess is they're going to have to outscore a lot of people in Cincinnati because they're not going to have any money to spend on defense. You're paying three guys essentially everything. So Trey Hendrickson looks like he is going to be traded away from the Bengals. Okay, that's where we start today. Tournament, a little NFL, Greg Campy, Jim Root, the contest over at VSiN.com, completely free. A $5,000 payout. We say hi on a Monday to the big guy, Dustin Swedelson. What's up?
Hey, yo, I'm pumped to talk to Campy because it's a little different than the past, right? When we had him on, he hadn't done what he did a year ago and knock off of Kentucky. So I want the perspective. I want to know, what is a school like that? What does a coach like that tell his guys in the locker room before they make history? Because there's no world where a team like Oakland, and you know, you went there, you kind of sweep that under the rug sometimes. You don't let people know. You claim South Carolina, but you technically graduated from Oakland. But there's no world where a team like Oakland should beat a Kentucky, even in a down year, let alone a 3-seed Kentucky. So I want some perspective there because he's now done that.
Well, he has made a Sweet 16 run, and he has gone to the round of 30. I mean, this is, if you think about the round of 32 for Oakland University in Rochester, Michigan, I mean, they're one of 32 left standing in all of college basketball. That's incredible. And as you mentioned, beating Kentucky, certainly a blue blood. Yeah, we can absolutely talk to him about that and talk to him about maybe some of the upset surprises on the horizon this year as far as the tournament. Conference tournament play. What did you take from the weekend? Did anything stand out to you?
Well, it doesn't matter, is what we learned. It doesn't matter at all. Michigan and Wisconsin, that late Big Ten game, completely irrelevant. How does Wisconsin lose that game and they're a higher seed than Michigan is, or a lower seed, I guess I should say, lower number, right? 3 versus a 5. That doesn't compute. Michigan won the league. Shouldn't they technically be swapped there? So I think these conference tournaments are a complete sham, and we need to get rid of them. And somehow, the big story with North Carolina, them almost coming back to beat a Duke team without the best player in the nation, without one of their best rebounders. Somehow that's what puts them over the top to make this thing. I don't know. The one positive I would say, we didn't have many bid stealers. That's the big thing for me, is we didn't have a lot of these teams take spots where a mid-major gets screwed in the end. I think it's Colorado State, that's our one bid stealer in the Mountain West, but Colorado State, look out. That team is red hot when it matters, and they might have a pro player in Nick Clifford.
Yeah, Colorado State's going to beat Memphis. In fact, I think they're favored in that matchup, maybe 2.5. Yeah, that's the one bid stealer, and it's Colorado State out of the Mountain West. A couple of things there. We'll get into the Kentucky mess. The North Carolina mess. We were on the air when all that went down. Now, I do think first off, I do think North Carolina was screwed. You can't call a lane violation, but that was just going to force overtime. So, and again, they're Duke without Cooper Flag. You have to beat them there. If you're a legit team, you got one quad, one win. Listen, it's asinine that they're in the dance, and we obviously know it's shady. And I'm going to wait to hear the clip with the committee chair that happens to be the AD at North Carolina with Torrey and Dog yesterday, because I'm fired up to hear what excuses that dude has, because it's a joke. I love the fact that they're like, yeah, well, when the votes are cast about North Carolina, he leaves the room. It's like, okay, we're born yesterday, dude. Stop. It's ridiculous. We're going to get started with the first four. An 8-8 Mad Dog 6 as far as conference tournament weekend. Anything that stood out when you got your bracket in your hand. It's still nice to have a bracket that you fill out manually. I would encourage everybody, if you can, to do so. But we're going to get started with the first four. So remember, the first four, and those four are going to be North Carolina, Texas, San Diego State, and Xavier. So no. Did I just botch the San Diego State? I know it's Xavier, Texas.
No, it's North Carolina, San Diego State.
Correct. So this is pretty fascinating, actually, because the first four, Dustin, started in 2011. 13 of its teams since then have won multiple games. Remember, VCU made it to the Final Four in the inaugural First Four 2011 season. VCU all the way to the Final Four. You had Mick Cronin in year 2 at UCLA, First Four in 21, all the way to the Final Four. So North Carolina and Texas and Xavier, these are teams that could make a run. Like, for reference, only 3 5 seeds in that same span from 2011 to present day, only 3 5 seeds have made it to the Final Four. So think about the chasm between a first four, essentially 65, 66, 67, and 68 as far as rankings, and the number 5 seeds, and only one more team over, a 14-year span has made it to the Final Four as a 5 seed.
Yeah, that's wild. And I think a part of that is what we've been doing today. Everyone across the board, every network talking about North Carolina. We kind of give these teams that just barely make it a rallying cry. They want to prove they belong. I think there's an element there. Sometimes it's who they have to take down initially, right? And they get a little bit of confidence and get rolling. Everything that we're going to say about North Carolina upcoming, everything about this team that I can't stand that they're in this tournament, I would be terrified to have to play them because everyone in the world is doubting them. That is a dangerous way for Hubert Davis to fuel that locker room right now. But there's something to momentum. There's something to playing that first game, getting the nerves out of the way in the play-in tournament, and then going into the field. There's something about that I think relaxes some of these teams, and then they're not as nervous as a team they're playing for the first time.
We should also discuss the fact that you have 14 teams from the SEC in the tournament. That is a joke. The previous record was 11 from the Big East back in, maybe it was 2011, something like that. but 14 teams from the SEC. Again, this comes down to your philosophy. Do you want to see some of the mid-majors over, teams that went 6-12 in conference? Because, you can't have 14 teams from one league in the tournament. It's just a joke. And again, you've got teams in the dance from the SEC that win 6-12. Texas wins 6-12 in conference. It's, to me, that is asinine. Iowa State, we should talk about Iowa State quickly because Keyshawn Gilbert, what do we always say about how you bet teams and teams that make a run when it comes to tournament time? And that is senior guards, guard play, somebody that can control the game. And Keyshawn Gilbert, who is the senior guard, their star at Iowa State, is going to miss the tournament. That's a big making there for Iowa State.
Yeah, look, I have a formula when it comes to guard play and finding teams that I want to back in the NCAA tournament. It's basically a perfect practice. You go find a school in a city where you don't know what city that they're based in with an undersized white point guard that can't go left. It's undefeated in the opening round of the NCAA tournament.
Okay. All right. A little racial start to the program for the big guy. Let's start with the number 1 overall seed. Then we'll start mixing in some calls here. And I genuinely want to hear that clip. Dustin tells me the boys being Tory and Dog went after this donk down in North Carolina. So I'm actually surprised he agreed to come on the program.
I am too.
But I'll be curious to hear what he had to say. The number 1 overall seed, even having lost 3 of 4, and let's be very clear, that Tennessee-Auburn game, Auburn did not want to be playing basketball. Because if you watched any of that, and the number dipped, but Auburn and Bruce Pearl wanted nothing to do with the conference tournament. Nothing. So they lose 3 of 4. They did lose to Duke in their lone meeting. Now, Duke is your favorite in the market to win a national championship, just to be clear. But Auburn is your number 1 overall seed. I don't even think with the 3 of 4 losses coming in, I don't think anybody has a problem with Auburn being 1, and they're in the South. One team in the South, the 8 seed, Louisville, they get a little bit of a break because they're in Lexington, obviously. Michigan State at 2. Again, Michigan at 5, won the Big Ten Conference Tournament, as Dustin laid out. Anything else from the South stand out to you?
Well, the big thing, I saw this making the rounds from Jay Williams, your boy who wore no shoes when he came on the show back in the day. Auburn losing 3 of their last 4. No team has ever lost 3 of its last 4 games entering the NCAA tournament and gone on to win the national championship. But I think all those were different philosophies and approaches. I agree with you completely. Auburn wanted rest. Auburn's not here to win an SEC title. That team is locked and loaded. They're also motivated to make a statement because remember, a year ago, they lost to Yale. They got eliminated by Yale in the opening round. This is a group that's only goal is to win a national title. They did not care about winning the SEC tournament. But that did matter to Tennessee. It was kind of a litmus test for Tennessee. So that was one big thing there. You touched on Louisville. I think Louisville's super dangerous. They have 3 veteran guys that have been through it before. Pat Kelsey, year 1 coming over. He's won right away. They're an interesting team. I hate that matchup for them with Creighton just because Kalkbrenner and Creighton can always shoot and they're dangerous. But those are 2 teams I thought I wanted to bet on. But that's a coin flip game for me. I go Louisville because I think that they have some vets that they can rely on and they're a little bit better. But that's a coin flip game. And then right underneath them, Michigan, UC San Diego. I mean, my 3rd grade teacher, Mrs. Dennison, called me. She loves UC San Diego. My mom loves UC San Diego. My Uber driver yesterday loved UC San Diego. Everyone's going to be on that team, and I don't blame them. I think they're going to knock off Michigan outright.
Midwest, Houston, who swept the league in conference tournament. See, Houston's a different type of team than even like an Auburn because there's no such thing with Calvin Sampson and the kind of attitude and culture he's built down in Houston to take their foot off the gas. And that's why I look right now at the market. They're 6-1. To me, that's the team. It's like Auburn's 4-1. Florida, who won the SEC conference tournaments, plus 380, and Duke is plus 320. Houston in the Midwest. It's a balanced region, is what I wrote in my notes. Houston, Roberts' injury is going to be a question. Clemson is in the Midwest. They made a run last year. Tennessee, Kentucky, Purdue, the Zags. I've got the Midwest as balanced.
I have Houston winning this thing. I don't think they have a real challenge. I think there's a lot of solid teams there, but don't you think Houston has seemingly the easiest path here? I know they're not the number one overall, but I think Houston has a really good draw. The way that they play, the way they defend, especially on the perimeter, they don't really have to face a ton of the elite three-point shooting teams potentially outside of Clemson. But at the bottom of that bracket, I don't trust Illinois despite being talented. I don't think Kentucky's ready. UCLA's all defense. Tennessee's all defense. Houston's the most balanced team there. I think Houston has a path to the Final Four, and I agree with you completely. 6-1, that seems cheap, especially when you consider, we talked about it all week, Patrick. Florida was about, 7-1 last week? They're down to plus 380. They were right there with Houston all the way up until Friday, Saturday, then, winning the SEC. Houston at 6-1 still seems like a really good value. We should bet that as a family.
I'm into it. I would say, for me, the easiest path is in the East for Duke because they're Duke. And they're a freaking wagon. Flag's going to be fine. I guess I'm intrigued about certain matchups. Like Arizona-Akron is just going to be a fun game as far as – in fact, let me look at the total. I bet you Arizona-Akron's like 180 or something like that.
Track meet.
167. Okay, a little bit lower than I thought. Let's go over there. Duke coming out of the East. Lock.
Okay. I went against the grain here. I got a team that I think has a path in this region in the East that sets up perfectly for what they want to do. Because you look at the bottom of this bracket in the East, you got BYU, loves to shoot the three. Wisconsin, loves to shoot the three. Alabama, loves to shoot the three. I'm fading all these three-point shooting teams this year. I don't trust them. I don't think they're reliable. And there's a team in this region that defends the perimeter well. That's St. Mary's. They're going to limit possessions. They have a bunch of vets. They're totally long on the outside. They're going to limit those chances from the beyond the perimeter. I think St. Mary's somehow ends up winning this region. I know it's crazy, but if there's any chance that flag is banged up, there could be a team or two along the way that knocks off Duke. If not, I like St. Mary's a lot.
Does St. Mary's even have an American on their team?
Ooh, that's a good question. Over under 1.5 Americans?
If St. Mary's were to meet Duke, that would be a blood freaking bath. So you keep going contrarian. I'll book you on that. St. Mary's. WCC. Get the hell out of here. The West. This is interesting because you've got Pitino, you've got Hurley, you've got Bill Self, you've got Calipari, and you have Florida, who dominated the SEC tournament. But again, this is Pitino's sixth team that he's taken to the tournament, which is crazy. And St. John's is legit. St. John's is, now, if they're going to be able to get a bucket or not when it matters is really the question about St. John's, but they're going to defend their asses off. Obviously, we know who'd we have on last week? Coach Matt McCall, and he said St. John's a Final Four team. But if they get there, they're going to have to get past Florida at some point. Missouri-Drake is a great matchup. I believe Drake's catching 6 in that.
Oh, yeah, we're taking that all day.
Of course we are. Texas Tech, people like JT Toppin, and Texas Tech has been kind of, for sharp bettors, a team that's been under the radar as a potential Final Four team. Anything else from the West? Big names as far as coaches. Obviously.
Yeah, that's the key here. This is a crazy group of coaches. I mean, the national titles, the elite recruits, the NBA prospects, Pitino, Calipari, Hurley, Self. But then also there's up-and-comers. Golden at Florida, McCasland at Tech, Ben McCollum, who's going to have his pick of Iowa or Indiana. And I'll throw Penny Hardaway in the mix. He recruits well. His teams usually play well. I mean, there's star power in this region. But this is also a region where I'm terrified as someone who has a St. John's ticket. Because I do think there are teams that are built to take down St. John's, including Arkansas, who's getting healthy at the right time with Boogie Flan coming back. That matchup does scare me in the second round, despite John Calipari not being able to coach himself out of a paper bag.
I would be curious, speaking of the West, and Florida, again, plus 380. Walter Clayton's ridiculous. What's fascinating to me is how coverage of the tournament handles Todd Golden. Because we're not really having the conversation that is as weird as it possibly gets. My man was preying on co-eds, and I don't think there's a question about it.
No, I think they have strong evidence.
They have plenty of evidence.
Yeah.
Do one Google search.
Yeah, it's I think maybe they win a couple games, although they're getting a lot of pub. Like they're the team everyone's picking to win it all. So you'd think it'd come up in a conversation or two. That's all.
It's got to be covered. I mean, look, Florida has been doing an extensive investigation because Golden can coach his balls. His off.
I'll tell you when it comes up. It comes up when they meet St. John's. That'll be the Elite Eight, because Rick Pitino will be like, "Hey, you covered me in the Italian restaurant. Let's make sure we cover this story about this guy down in Gainesville."
Yeah, Rick Pitino is going to be screaming Olive Garden from the top of a mountain. Like, dude, why are you talking about me? That was all over ESPN. What's up with your golden boy here, Todd Golden? North Carolina, again, I think the biggest snub has to be West Virginia. If you're going to pick one team, 6-10 in quad one, that would be it. Indiana beat Michigan State, beat Purdue. No offense to Torrey, I'd take West Virginia over Indiana. But, 15 losses for Texas, 7 quad one wins, if you want to throw them in as they got into the first 4, whatever. North Carolina is the joke.
Of course it is. It doesn't make sense. West Virginia is 6-10 in quad one. That's 5 more wins in quad one than North Carolina. That's insane. We're going to start touting North Carolina 8-0 in quad two. If quad two was important, it'd be called quad one. I don't know what we're doing here. And then you look at the marquee wins. Where is that marquee road win for the Tar Heels? Their best road win was at Florida State. Florida State stinks. By the way, they also lost a quad 3 game to Stanford. And you run through West Virginia. One at Kansas, Gonzaga on a neutral, Arizona on a neutral, and they beat Iowa State. Any one of those wins is better than anything that North Carolina has. North Carolina has a win under UCLA. That's their best win of the year. And on the road, it's Florida State. This is absolutely a joke.
Field is 68, and it seems universal. Like, there's nobody outside of the donk that Torrey, the AD, that Torrey and Dog talked to. You're going to hear that clip coming up in just a bit. There's nobody that believes North Carolina should be, like, it's universal. And the sports world, social media doesn't agree on anything.
No. And my question is, I keep hearing it's about TV ratings, but I'm curious your thought on this, because is college basketball and college basketball fan bases, are they really big enough to impact the TV ratings of an event this big, where the event is so much bigger than the pieces every year? Like, this isn't a standalone Monday game in December. This is the national tournament that everyone has brackets for, that everyone tunes in for. Does North Carolina really bring the amount of eyeballs that does make a sizable difference when it comes to TV ratings? I just don't feel like it does.
888 Mad Dog 6, 888-623-3646. Again, you'll hear from the North Carolina AD with Dog and Torrey coming up. We're going to get to your calls. We want some sleepers. Who's going to make a run? Who did you have a problem with being left out? And again, I got Duke, obviously. I got Auburn. I got Houston. I might have to do something interesting in the West, but it's going to be hard with those 4. Those 4 1 seeds are wagons. 888-623-3646, just getting started on a Monday here. VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson. is VSiN Live.
To me, it look like a leprechaun to me. I got to do look up in the tree. Who else in the leprechaun say yeah?
On Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.
Could be a crackhead.
Goated. Again, if you just want quick, efficient, 90-second breakdowns of every tournament game, go over to VSiN Live on YouTube, and that's what you're going to get. So before you place a bet, before you watch the game, if you have intrigue, again, great content by everybody over at VSiN Live on YouTube. 90 seconds, here's the matchup, here's who's going to win. It's that simple. As we do welcome you back here, VSiN Live, Dustin Swedelson. I'm Patrick Maher. We've got a bunch of calls coming in. We want some sleepers in the tournament now that the 68 is set. You got the first four coming up. We've got Greg Campy coming up at the top of the hour, Oakland Golden Grizzly head coach Jim Root. But first, let's hear, right before we get to your calls, let's hear from UNCAD, Bubba Cunningham. So this is yesterday on the Selection Sunday special with Tori and Dog, and UNCAD, Bubba Cunningham, explaining why North Carolina got into the dance.
The injury to DeVries is one of the factors. Player availability is one of the things that we take a look at. And they had a few great wins early in the year when he was eligible. He had a great year all year long. They did, even without him. But ultimately, when the final decision came by the committee and the voting was done, they were just on the outside looking in. And it's really disappointing for any team that doesn't make the field. And, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio State, Boise State, those are the four teams that didn't make it. Carolina wasn't in until the Memphis win and ended up being the extra team in. So
but DeVries got hurt in November. They played a full schedule without him. They won 10 league games. They won at Kansas. They beat Iowa State, who's a 3 seed. I mean, I would hope that you guys didn't kill the team's season. Those kids on that team who played 3 months without that player, and you said, well, you know what, the player's out, so we're not going to put him in the tournament, because that's not fair. You can't have that team play all year, and now you tell me, well, they're not going to make it because DeVries is out. That's not a fair thing to do to that team. Hopefully the committee didn't do that.
No, that's not what happened at all. They had an outstanding year. But we also know that a couple of the wins early were when he was eligible, and they were 13-10 after he went out.
I love Dog holding Bubba Cunningham's feet to the fire there. It's just his explanation makes no sense. What is the point of all of those kids playing the rest of that season without Tucker DeVries, their best player, then, if once he goes down, all the wins that happened before just don't matter? I don't understand that. I look at the resumes here, and none of this tracks, guys. None of it freaking tracks. North Carolina, 1-12 in quad one. What does quad one mean to us? What quad one is trying to tell us, how do you compete with the elites? How do you compete with the teams that you're going to see in the second, third round of the NCAA tournament? And they frankly just didn't get it done. North Carolina 8-0 in quad two. That's awesome. That's really solid. However, you look at things, they lost a quad three game to a team like Stanford. Stanford's a bad basketball program. Also, Stanford had an epically bad year for themselves because they're traveling cross country half the season. They went 1-5 versus ACC teams that made this NCAA tournament. Their best road win was at Florida State and Tallahassee in a year where Leonard Hamilton decided, I don't want to do this anymore. So I'm looking at North Carolina's resume, and I don't want to be outraged about it because it's a year where we didn't have a lot of bid stealers, and I usually would be more annoyed if a mid-major was getting screwed here. But the difference is you can't compare the resumes to what North Carolina did to what West Virginia, and I'll even say Indiana. And I don't think Indiana was all that good this year. They came on strong at the end. But that was also the same argument used for North Carolina, is that they came on strong at the end. And why did they come on strong at the end? Because North Carolina plays in the ACC, and the ACC was an absolute joke this season. Top to bottom, outside of Duke and Clemson and Louisville to a degree, everyone else, pretty much a bad basketball program. You had coaches, like I mentioned, Hamilton walking away at Florida State. Jim Larinaga tapped out in the middle of the season. That's how bad things were going in the ACC. That's what North Carolina was playing. And you look at West Virginia, West Virginia's resume is just so significantly better. And I don't see how you're going to come out here and tell me that West Virginia winning at Kansas, beating Gonzaga on a neutral, Arizona on a neutral, and Iowa State all teams that made this NCAA tournament and act like that's not better than anything North Carolina did. Every time North Carolina was asked to punch up in weight class, they weren't able to do it. And even Indiana won in East Lansing. That is way bigger than anything North Carolina had to do on the road. So how can we take North Carolina's quad 2 record and come out here and claim that it's more important than West Virginia's quad 1? That doesn't track to me. And then how are we viewing Tucker DeVries? Because this reminds me of Florida State getting held out of the college football playoff. And basketball and football are totally different sports. Are we actually saying that Tucker DeVries is the equivalent of Jordan Travis, a quarterback, an All-American? I don't think that's the type of impact this type of player makes. But also, more importantly, every bracketologist had West Virginia making the big dance as of last Friday. Now they're out following North Carolina beating a Duke team or losing to a Duke team without their best player. None of this tracks.
I'm back here, Donk. Well, I didn't even, my internet went out, so I didn't even hear what this Bubba said to Dog. Can you just tell me?
He said Tucker DeVries is out. That's why they're without Tucker DeVries, their best player, and he's holding it against the rest of the team that they had to play the rest of the season without their best player.
And what Dog say?
Torrey went back at him after and basically was like, Torrey's been feisty.
Because Torrey's bitter about Indiana.
Yeah, no, Torrey's been feisty, but he's been spot on.
All right, let's get to some calls. 888 Mad Dog 6, 888-623-3646. North Carolina. Chad is a fan of North Carolina. I know that, and he joins us. Chad in California. I don't know. Can I punch him up? I can. Hey, Chad, what's up?
What's up, fellas? I feel like I live in the twilight zone, and here's why. Hearing Dog use rebuttal saying it's not fair to the other kids on that roster, and they put in all the blood, sweat, and tears this season, and it's not only a DeVries-led team. Literally last year, we went over this with my Seminoles, and it was the whole other way around. This team can't make it. They got their quarterback. They can't play the game without the quarterback. I mean, it is insane to me how there's more people outraged about my Tar Heels being the 68th team in than there was about an undefeated Florida State team not making it. Like, I get it's apples to oranges, but when we did this college football expansion, everyone said, and you guys, obviously we're on VSiN only at that point, so I'm not referencing you. Everyone said the good thing about an expansion in college football is now you can't complain about the last team in because there's so many teams. Just like college basketball, how no one complains about the 68th team. And now all of a sudden it's Carolina. And look, West Virginia probably did deserve to make it. And maybe they should take a spot of, I don't know, San Diego State, who wasn't a good team this year. They did beat Houston. I understand that. And Houston's one of the best teams in the country. But Utah State's not a great team this year. But there's other atrocities. I mean, if you look, Louisville's number 10 in the country, and they're an 8th seed. I mean, if you want to do the math on that, that doesn't make any sense. There's a lot of things. Wisconsin is a higher seed than Michigan, and Michigan beat them the same day the bracket came out. Like, that doesn't make any sense. So there's a lot of stuff that doesn't make any sense. With that said, my sleeper is North Carolina. After we beat San Diego State, we're going to beat Ole Miss, and Iowa State missing that guard. Don't be surprised if the Tar Heels are in the Sweet 16, baby.
Well, I mean, slow down. I do like the concept of, let's put it this way. North Carolina, now, should they be in? No. Hubert Davis stinks. All right? That team is like, no. However, it does add a little bit of a spicy element. If they start to go on a run, we are all going to be so bitter, and we're all going to be so, like, biting our tongues based on calling them trash. So there is a little bit of that element added with North Carolina being in the mix.
Oh, yeah, no, they have fuel. They have us against the world. No one wants us here. No one said we should be here. And I agree with Chad. I think they might go on a Sweet 16 run. This is the type of year where these intangible things happen, especially when these teams are looking for some juice, some gas to take it to a next level. North Carolina is a team I wouldn't want to see. That's what I'll say. I would not want to see them if I was another team in the dance.
How long is the Vice Chair Keith Gill clip?
It's pretty long, actually. We may need to
Okay, well, let's hold on to that. We'll play it before 5 o'clock in Greg Campy, but I want to mix in some calls here. Let's go to our buddy Jeff in Chicago here on VSiN Live. Hi, Jeff.
Hey, guys. Great to join you. Couple of points I just want to say. First off, Dustin and Stormy over the weekend, fantastic duo. I mean, Dustin, kudos. I mean, you guys have great chemistry. So not like you and Patrick, but,
He's not
It
even
was
smiling.
fantastic.
He's pensively looking at his computer because he's so excited about this compliment, Jeff. You don't know what you're doing right now. You're gassing up the big guy.
I have to play it cool. I have to play it cool because I usually don't have chemistry with women. So
She's
it's a
the
new
easiest
thing for me.
person to have chemistry
I
with.
know she makes
So
it very
you
easy.
can't even take credit for it. But go ahead, Jeff.
No, I mean, well, first time for everything. But second of all, Jay Billis, like I was listening to the VSiN show today, he said he did not care about the last 4 teams that were put into the tournament. It does not matter. Okay, great point, Jay. And that was on Sunday during the fucking broadcast. Excuse my language, which is idiotic by far. And I'm an IU grad. IU did not belong in the tournament. They're terrible. But I will just say the odds for IU to make the tournament prior to the selection, minus 3,500. UNC plus 400. Do with that what you will. My next 2 things. Samich had a great article today, which I don't know if you guys are going to touch on. I don't want to steal any thunder. But his thoughts on parlaying a couple of, Elite 8 picks, I just want to get your thoughts on because I think they're fascinating. Duke Houston to reach the Elite 8 plus 133. St. John's, and this wasn't one of Samich's, but St. John's to reach the Sweet 16 minus 170. Thoughts on those?
Duke, Houston, Elite 8 plus money.
Done.
Stealing. Great
Done.
job, Samich. You can go read. Good job, Jeff. You can go read that article over at VSiN.com. That is, I can't believe it's a plus price, to be honest with you.
Yeah, I'm looking at his article now. Plus 117 is the number. That feels like I thought you have to lay 150 to get that. Look, the odds of Duke getting eliminated without Cooper Flagg really low. I love Houston. I think Houston got a great draw. I think they have a lot of teams that can't do what they do on both ends. So yeah, I might follow Samich on that one. I like that a lot.
I think you can find Houston even longer than 6-1.
Can you? Let's look.
Here's what I like about Houston, and I'm down on Auburn. The fact that, and if you watch the Tennessee game, you know what I'm talking about. The fact that they did not take the conference tournament seriously. I'm out on Pearl. I'm out on Auburn. That's a soft team. Sorry, they just are. And conversely, Houston is the opposite. And Calvin Sampson deserves this. My man was just sending text messages.
Oh, dude. Like, if we go...
He got railroaded.
If we go back and judge people properly on how we view certain laws now versus then, not to make it political, but people with like weed violations who end up in jail, this dude was sending text messages and he was kicked out of Indiana.
You should, yeah. If I was fired or I'd be off the planet if you see some of the texts I've sent to girls in the past.
Ooh.
So Calvin Sampson, he's fine. You know what he was? Ahead of the curve.
No, he was. Now, was he doing NIL before that was legal? Probably that too. That's probably part of the problem.
Yeah, and Bill Self is clean. Stop.
Oh, they're all dirty. They're all dirty.
Speaking of Houston, let's talk to Z Money here, VSiN Live. Hi, Z Money.
Hey, I could totally relate to homeboy just sitting over there smiling because he got a compliment.
You should have seen him. He had the most serious look on his face. He was drinking it in.
That would have been me, man. That would have been me. Anyways, man, I'm going to go ahead and give him another compliment because I love y'all's chemistry, man. And I don't tune into a lot of shows, but I will tune into this almost every day on the ESPN show. So shout out to y'all. Real quick, man, you heard it here first. Pretty easy to predict. Don't believe the Houston hype. They will not make the Final Four. The game right before the Final Four to make it, they will lose because Houston chokes, and they will continue to choke, sadly. And I'm sorry to all the U of H fans out there to hear this, but it is.
Z Money is out. Past 5 seasons under Sampson. Program has made it as far as the Final Four, the Elite 8, and Sweet 16 the other 3 times. So this is just a culmination. This is like the Jordan Bulls trying to get over the bad boy Pistons. You got to build towards it. And by the way, they can score LJ Cryer.
That's the difference. They can shoot the 3. They're one of the best 3-point shooting teams in the league. And that's a problem for a lot of these teams that rely on perimeter shooting too. Houston has the ability to play inside out, but more importantly, they're going to take away those 3-point shots from the other team. What we talked about it, you called it right away. What they did to BYU in the Big 12 tournament was a freaking statement. They absolutely eliminated everything they wanted to do beyond the arc. Houston could do that to everyone, and then they're going to make their threes on the other end. They've never had an offense like this.
Down on Auburn. Screw Auburn.
You don't like Bruce Pearl, though. You don't like Bruce Pearl. Be fair.
Bruce Pearl's a donk. But I'm up on Florida took it serious. Wisconsin ran out of gas. You can't really blame Wisconsin. That was 4 games in 4 nights?
Yeah, but what we saw with Wisconsin against Michigan was what I was intrigued about the Wolverines. I thought they were a tough matchup based on the draw, and we saw how it played out with the Badgers. When you have 2 7-footers and the other team just doesn't have size to deal with them, and you have a player in Wolf who runs that point center where he's distributing at 7 feet, it just makes it so hard. However, they're matched up with Creighton in the first round, and they do have a 7-footer in Kalkbrenner. So that kind of mitigates there being a good draw for Michigan. It was the right matchup against Wisconsin at the right time.
Here's my take on Michigan, and I can say it because I grew up in Michigan. They stink.
Oh, I didn't, wait, hold on. They have San Diego, not Kalkbrenner.
Oh, now he's ruminating. He doesn't want to get caught.
I don't
make mistakes, bro. Don't interrupt me to correct your dumb mistake. It's sports talk. Stop pretending like people care. See what he does? He just did that. He completely ignored what I said because he was so concerned about being right about what he said. Asshole.
I just realized I said something incorrect. I just wanted to fix it.
I know.
What's wrong with catching yourself?
But do you agree that Michigan stinks?
They do. They turn the ball over. That's what's going to do them in.
They're sloppy.
They're bad. They're really bad on offense. The only way it works if the other team doesn't have size. That's it.
And people just want to jock the Dusty May guy.
Yeah, we'll see how that plays out. We'll see how that plays out.
He just brought that big donk from down south, that golden guy.
He had momentum, right? That's why they brought all the transfers in. He had momentum. He got Wolf from Yale. He brought in a couple other pieces. Golden came from FAU, as you mentioned. I don't know if the momentum's there to get those types of transfers in year 2. We'll see how that goes.
Yeah, that's a good point. And they locked him up because they didn't want him to take the Indiana job. The big guy. Getting some compliments. You like to see it. Had a big weekend with Stormy. Now he's back with the A-team.
The OG.
Wait, speaking of which, A-team would be Steve Torrey, and he went after. Now, Torrey's he's butthurt with his Indiana Hoosiers. He went after Keith Gill, who is the committee vice chair, alongside Bubba Cunningham. Has there ever been a more North Carolina AD than Bubba Cunningham?
No, he's born for it. You think Bubba's his actual birth name? I feel like it might be.
Bubba hanging out with Belichick. No, Belichick's on the beach doing aerobics.
Hey, but
if you missed it,
one thing you got to give Bubba credit for, getting a lot of pub for North Carolina athletics these days. You got to give him a little bit credit.
Hey, that's a tremendous point. If you missed it,
what's that post called?
Women are an insanely intoxicating drug because Bill Belichick is on the beach doing acrobatic stuff. Go look it up. It's the best. My man's 75. He is my father's age, hanging with a 23-year-old, doing gymnastics on the beach. Life.
Yeah, but who saw Bill Belichick having that kind of core strength to pull off that kind of move at his age? I'm impressed more than anything.
I know. It's funny. All right. VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson. This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.
Who was it on Friday? Our boy Tommy? Oh, Utah Valley? Is that what it was? Late?
Yeah.
Yeah. Let's go, Tommy. Here, VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Dustin Swedelson, I'm Patrick Maher. Naya, Ryan in the mix. Remember, VSiN Live on YouTube. You can watch the show. We appreciate anybody that joins us. Give it a thumbs up. Give it a subscribe. And over at the YouTube page, VSiN, you want a breakdown of every single game. That's what we're going to do for you. 90 seconds. Make it quick. Make it concise. Let's go. Tournament time. Doesn't get any better. Here's our buddy Tommy, who's handed out winners here on VSiN Live. What up, Tommy?
Hey, what's up, fellas?
Nice call on Friday night, brother.
That's how we do it, right? Get back on the winning track.
So you feel good about yourself after a little bit of a rough stretch. Let's go.
Except for that I took out a HELOC on Sunday to bet against Michigan because I'm an Ohio State fan first and foremost. Secondly, I just can't stand Michigan in general. I got to watch, Jacob from frickin' Twilight and Larry Bird's illegitimate son, dance around on the court. And then, this Donaldson kid 3 times in a row give me the sleep good night. Oh, man, I'm out. I'm the hugest Triton fan you've ever seen in your life. Obviously, I'm from San Diego. UCSD, I don't know. I got all these people, clamoring that UCSD is going to beat them. Well, I tell you, I'm going to be at Vegas I'm betting the house. I will be the loudest Triton fan in the entire building, and the only thing I've ever done is walk on the campus.
Our buddy Tommy, he's bitter. I'm with you on Michigan. I don't know why. I haven't connected with this team. I have connected with Michigan, obviously the Fab Five. UC San Diego and Michigan. I think people would be surprised if you're just looking up at the betting board. Dustin, it's just 2.5 with Michigan laying it.
Oh, I already bet San Diego. San Diego's the play there. I think that the way they're going to slow the pace down, that's the problem teams like Michigan run into. They're sloppy with the basketball, and there's going to be less possessions than normal, which means those mistakes kind of compound, and San Diego can shoot from the outside. They have some vets. It's a really, really bad matchup for them. I'm with you completely. Like, Michigan also was bad down the stretch, and a few teams in the Big Ten didn't care about that tournament as much as they did. That's probably why they ended up winning it.
Well, here's what we'll do. We'll play the clip. It's 2 minutes with Tori going at Vice Chair Keith Gill of the committee after Greg Campy. Yep. Let's just continue to mix in the calls. Some good stuff here on the tournament. I believe it. Are you still up at the leaderboard? You're still atop the leaderboard over at VSiN.com as well, right?
I'm on it. I wouldn't say I'm on top of it, but I am certainly on it. It was a good weekend. Actually, really good college basketball weekend. The less you know, the better you do.
Oh, let's go, big guy. Paul, Kentucky. Paul, hi.
How you doing today?
Good, Paul. What's up?
I'm sideways, man. I'm a diehard Louisville Cardinal fan, and big elephant in the room that nobody's talking about is how in the heck Louisville's 27-7, and I know the ACC may be down, blah, blah, blah. We beat Clemson twice. Clemson's a 5 seed. We're 8 seed. We're finished 10th, and the poll that just come out, we're 10th in the country. We're 8 seed. The disrespect that they showed the University of Louisville, I don't know if it's because all the shenanigans that went on while Patino was there, but it's absolutely ridiculous, and nobody's talking about it. I want somebody to ask that bozo down there in Duke, who's over the committee, why in the hell are we an 8 seed, 27-7, went through the championship game against Duke, and we just ran out of gas because we got a bunch of injuries. The how in the heck and the total disrespect of disrespecting Chucky Hepburn not being in the top 10 Bob Cousy Award, and Kelsey for turning around a program that won 12 wins in 2 seasons, and 27-7 with an all-new team. Just a total disrespect to Louisville. And I want somebody from that committee to tell me why in the world we're an 8 seed.
There you go. Pat Kelsey, he's weird. He's like, you know what he reminds me of? He reminds me of the dude coaching at Minnesota with the row in the
PJ Fleck.
PJ Fleck. That's like Pat Kelsey, but that dude took a program, a once proud program that was in the doldrums, and flipped it in 1 year. It's crazy, but that's why I always say, and Dustin, I've been drilling this in your brain for years, college basketball, college football, I bet coaches.
And Kelsey won. Kelsey won. He won at JMU. That's why he got the gig. But you're right. The way he turned it down quickly and how he did it, he has vets, man. That's what we want to bet on. I want veteran guards. kids that aren't going to be shaky out there the first game of the dance. Edwards from JMU came with him. Hepburn from Wisconsin. Got a kid, Rain Smith from College of Charleston, who could shoot the lights out of the damn thing. They have guys who've been through this before. They're all good shooters. I think if they get past Creighton, they are a dangerous out.
Well, they are the 8 seed because of the ACC. Like you said it.
Yeah.
The ACC was so down, so maybe a little underseeded.
So I guess, do you think Lexington is a benefit to them because they don't have to travel far? At the same time, it's going to be packed with Kentucky fans rooting against them.
Yeah, but I'll take the travel advantage.
That's probably fair. That's probably easier.
I wouldn't want to deal with it. Look, you mentioned all the transfers Kelsey got. You still have to coach them up once you get there. So,
yeah.
Coach Campy's going to join us on Zoom?
Oh, yeah, Coach Campy's on Zoom today.
That's incredible. We are going to talk to the legend coming up next. And trust me,
you hear me?
we will play the clip of Torrey talking to the committee vice chair, Keith Gill, with Mad Dog yesterday. I'm told it got a little contentious, which you like to see. But first, we're going to talk to the man, the myth, the legend, Greg Campy, of course, Oakland University head coach. Coming up next, VSiN Live here on Mad Dog Sports Radio.
Covering the spread all night long. This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio. To VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.
Okay, VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. So there was a silver lining in the Horizon semis when Robert Morris beat Oakland. Now, we were on the air while it was going on, and I wasn't really talking because as an Oakland alum, I was obviously watching the game. Dustin said during the commercial, silver lining, I can reach out to Coach Campy. And I said, that's not what I'm talking about. This is not what we were hoping for. Of course, Greg Campy, who's done the show many times over the years, always been so kind to us. Oakland head coach, 41 years, a legend. Remember last year, 14 seed over the 3 seed Kentucky, and then the close loss to NC State. And he joins us now. Coach Campy, thanks for a couple minutes. Appreciate you.
Patrick, I'll always be here for you guys, especially an Oakland guy. But, you and Dustin, I like doing this show, and I like what you guys do. So anytime.
Coach, you're the best. Thanks for doing this.
Well, let me ask one question before you follow up. Because what stood out to me in the Robert Morris loss, so, I mean, I don't want to bring up bad memories, but, you're up 3 with 18 seconds to go. What stood out to me, Coach, and maybe it's just 41 years of doing it, but you seem so stoic and composed after overtime. You were just like, yeah, that's the way it goes. Almost just like another loss when you had it. Were you as composed on the inside as you seemed on the outside?
I'm not sure I've slept since then. So that's the answer. I mean, what good would it do me at that point, in that point of the season? The video sure looked like it was our ball. Sure looked like there was a travel. It sure looked like, it was a touch foul. And, sometimes things just go against you. I could have responded and reacted the way, but at that time of the year, that's only going to get you in trouble, right? It's going to get you the technical foul or something like that costs your team the game. So you just don't do that. But I've had to live with it. I also called a timeout at an inopportune time because we just had nothing going on that play. And so instead of letting my point guard throw up some crappy shot, I called a timeout, and then we didn't even get a shot. So, you can blame me too. I mean, I could sit there and say I didn't like the call and all that, but the official could say, well, you still had the ball with 15 seconds to go. Why didn't you get a shot? So, it's just the game. And yeah, it hurts because I think not only do I think we had gotten to be a really good team and were we playing good, I thought we could get in this tournament and win another game. I really did. That's how well we were playing.
Well, let's go back to happier times. And a year ago at this time where you did pull off the miracle. So I think our audience is fascinated to hear, like, what's the formula? What's the recipe when you're a team like Oakland and you're a 14th seed? You've got John Calipari on the other side, number 3 seeded Kentucky there. What would you say is the formula? If one of these smaller schools is going to knock off a Goliath, what should they be planning to do?
Well, you have to disrupt what the other team does. So many times a real good team at our level gets in the tournament and they play a fast pace, because they've got the better players and they play up and down in that. And then they get in the tournament and they're playing against a team that plays like they do, but they've just got better players, obviously. When you see the upset is when, like, Kentucky came into our game averaging 90-some points a game. We held them to 76, and they made their last 6 threes. They were leading the country in three-point shooting, hadn't made but one, I think, until the last 6 minutes of the game, and they made their last 6. That's why they got to 76. It would have been in the 60s. You have to control. You have to do things different than they're used to, and then you have to hang around. Because if you hang around and you get into those last 3 minutes, the pressure's all on them. Your kids are like, I knew we could beat these guys. I know we're good, right? I know we can go. And all that does is motivate them to play even better, while the people on that team are like, uh-oh, I've seen this happen to people. And it's hard to make a shot. It's hard to make a play at that time. I mean, the guard from Kentucky had an awful turnover in the game that I don't think he would have turned it over if it was a regular season game. But when it's winning or go home, the pressure to make the next play is so hard on a team that's such a heavy favorite.
Coach Greg Campy, of course, Oakland University. So I just wanted to pass this along to you because maybe sometimes you can be in a bubble in Michigan, but I'm out in Los Angeles now by the beach. And last year after the Kentucky win, I was walking my dog, and I literally walked by a couple of guys talking about the Oakland University upset. So we're standing here at Pacific Ocean talking about your team beating Kentucky. I walked up, talked to the guys because one of the gentlemen went to Kentucky. He hated Calipari. He couldn't believe they lost to an Oakland Golden Grizzlies team. And it was like, for some reason, I have to tell you, Coach, it was like the proudest moment being, 3,000 miles away, and we're talking about Oakland University. Pretty cool.
Yeah, I've got lots of stories like that. I'll tell you my favorite story. There's a elderly lady that works at a gas station right by the university that I frequent that gas station, and all through the year she would ask, good win, good this, is Trey Townsend really a good kid, that kind of stuff. And so on Selection Sunday, I got stopped to get gas on my way home, and she was in there, and she peeks out from behind the thing, and she goes, "We can beat Kentucky, can't we?" And I go, "Sure we can. Why wouldn't you think we could?" She goes, "I know we can." And so I didn't think about it. About a week and a half later, after, we'd lost to NC State, I got home. I go walking in there to get my Diet Dr. Pepper, and she comes running out from behind the thing and gives me a big hug, and she goes, "I knew we could. I bet $10 money line. I won $750. And I was like, she was so happy. And it was like, that's probably a week's pay for her. And, but that's my favorite story out of all of it.
That's incredible.
Now, when you guys go and play NC State and you lose in overtime, the round of 32, first off, how hard was it to get the guys back? Was it hard to get the guys back up for that game? And then when you see what NC State does, do you go, this close to being us?
Yeah, that one's probably will haunt me the rest of my life because, again, we had the ball. We got a very similar to the Robert Morris, where there was a long delay by the referees to see who had the ball, and we didn't get a shot off. They got the ball out of bounds with 1 second to go, where I thought it was ours, and maybe we have a chance. And then in overtime, we got a bad break and a 1-point lead, and the guy shoots an air ball, and it goes right into their guy's hands, and he lays it in. If it hits the rim at all, we probably get the rebound. And who knows what happens. So I got to live with that. And they had DJ Burns. Remember that big guy?
Yeah.
And when I called timeout with 17 seconds to go on the ball, that allowed them to take Burns out of the game. And they put some big athletic guy in there. And he's the guy that tipped the ball that made the play. So, you live with that. It's in your mind. Because we're 15 seconds from the Sweet 16 at Oakland. It was not hard to get them up, for this, and it wouldn't have been hard to get them up for Marquette the next game. I mean, you're on a wave of emotions in the NCAA tournament, and the more you win, the bigger the wave gets, and you ride it. And we were riding it. I mean, we were playing at a Final Four level in those two games. We did not play that level all year, but for that couple of weeks, we were playing at that level. So. I wouldn't sit here and tell you we couldn't have got to the Final Four. I mean, George Mason did it. Loyola's done it. It's happened. When you get a wave going, you ride that wave. And I had really good players too. I mean, that's part of it also. Rocket Watts, Trey Townsend, Jack Golke was on a shooting, it was an unbelievable shooting spree. If we would have lost eventually, it probably would have been because he went 0 for 10 or something, but at that point we were playing great, and you just let them play. Just get out of their way and let them play.
It's Coach Campy joining us here, Mad Dog Sports Radio, VSiN Live. It's crazy because people that hadn't seen Oakland last year, that watched them in the tournament, I had so many people say, wait, this team's legit? Like, they've got players and they're fundamental, and so I guess I ask you, so many years at Oakland, is it just a special confluence of events that brings a team like that together last year? Or can it happen again? Like you mentioned, 1 6 of 9 down the stretch, your team really started to mature, it felt like, and build towards the end of the year. Did you have that type of feeling about this team this year as well, Coach?
Yeah, I did. I really thought we were playing at a level, and I thought we would play on a Tuesday because we had such a bad start and our schedule was so hard. I don't know where we would have been seated, but I was hoping that we'd get the Tuesday night first round game where we could play a mid-major that we could beat and get another NCAA win, and then go play Duke or somebody and see what happens. I kind of was looking forward to that. But honestly, last year's team's not the best team I ever coached. We had a team in, I think, 2011 or 12 that it all comes down to that draw. It was the year that VCU went to the Final Four. And if we'd have got their draw, I think that team could have done the same thing. But we got, I don't know how this happened. We got Texas. And I had a 6'11" kid that got drafted by the Atlanta Hawks. I had Travis Bader, the greatest all-time three-point shooter in the history of the game at that time, broke J.J. Redick's record. I had Reggie Hamilton, who the next year would lead the country in scoring. I had Will Hudson, who was one of the greatest offensive rebounders I've ever coached at 6'9". So we were 6'11", 6'9". Bader was 6'6". And Texas is ranked number 1 in the country the last week of the regular season. They lose their last game. They go to the Big 12 tournament. They lose the opening round, and they drop from 1 to a 4 seed. And I was told afterwards they wanted them in Tulsa with Kansas so that they would sell out the venue all day long. Well, we're a 13th seed. Texas had Tristan Thompson, who ended up on the Cavaliers, right? They had 3 first-round picks on that. We lost 84-80, I think. And if we get any other draw, because my big, he was good. Tristan Thompson was the only guy in the country that probably guarded. And we get them in the opening round. It all comes down to luck of the draw and things like that. And, and then playing so well at that time. We played great that day, but we just couldn't overcome. They had, I think Hamilton was another first-round pick, and then the guard from Toronto, I can't think of his name right now, that was a first-round pick. So, I mean, they were a great team. It all depends on that drawing that you get.
So how much with three-point shooting? Because you mentioned you had an elite three-point shooter. You obviously had Golke a year ago. How difficult is it in that opening round to get those guys going? Because a lot's made in our world that sometimes it's hard to rely on that 3 ball in the first 2 rounds of the tournament. Is there anything different you need to do? Have you found that to be difficult?
We started 1 for 13 from the floor against Kentucky last year, and we never were down by more than 3 points because our defense was so good, and they didn't shoot it well either. And then Golke went in the game. He was 10 for 20 from the 3 for the game, but people don't remember he was 0 for 3 to start. And then 1 went in, and we just started going. And then they all went in. I mean, it was unbelievable, that run he had. 7 in the first half. I think it was 7 of 11 or 12 at halftime, but he started 0 for 3. He banked 1 in. But I don't think you can win an upset like that in this day and age without making 3-point shots. There has to be an equalizer. There has to be something that, Kentucky had 3 7-footers. We had none. Our biggest guy was 6'9", and we were 6'9", 6'6", 6'7". So they were, 3 7-footers and 6'7" and 6. They were. You over time, you have to have an equalizer to the amount of offensive rebounds they're going to get, the lack of offensive rebounds you're going to get when you play a team like that if you're a mid-major. So I think the 3-point shot is the great equalizer for sure.
Yeah, it bridges the gap, right? And with limiting the possessions and you scoring 3s when they're scoring 2s, obviously it's a math game in the end for you guys. I am curious about some of the tournament teams that you guys did play during the year, because you played a bunch of them. The first one that jumps out to me I want to get your thoughts on is Arkansas, because looks like they're getting Boogie Flan back, and obviously 15 points a game, really special player. Do you think, based on what you saw from them when you played them early in the year, he is a difference maker for them come tournament time in their bracket?
100%. But if he hasn't played, is he going to be able to make an open shot? Is he going to be able to score the ball? I don't think over time he will. There's going to be a flaw in there. But for one game, he could come out against Kansas in that opening game. We played Kansas too. So it's a unique opening game for us. I think it's one of the most intriguing opening round games. And for us, it's really intriguing because we played them both. But yes, he could be a difference maker. The thing that I think he'll do well is he'll help them defensively. I think he's very good at distributing the ball and very good defensively. And that'll upgrade their defense. And they're going to need that against Kansas. Kansas was ranked number 1 in the country when we played them. Yep. And I walked out of there thinking, if they're number 1 in the country, we're way better than I think we are. And I didn't know which way that would go. I was hoping it would go that way, but it really, I think that, there was something missing. We've played Kansas many times, and we've gone in there when they were And there was just something missing on that team. And I know Bill knows it himself. I don't know if I couldn't put my finger on what it was, because they beat us. They beat us by like 18. But there was for being the number one team in the country. And I called Izzo afterwards, or no, actually he called me to ask me what I thought. And I said that to him. And because they had just beaten Michigan State too. And he goes, well, it's Kansas, it's Bill Self, it's all that. But I don't know. And I think time, it caught up with them. It'll be interesting to see how they do in the NCAA tournament. Can he turn that around? If anybody can, it's Bill Self. So we'll see.
Yeah, I mean, down year for Kansas is still an up year for a lot of programs. And if they just put the talent together at the right time, certainly something can happen there. Another team you played, Illinois. I want to save the Izzo conversation with Michigan State because they are dangerous. But Illinois has been a weird team, Coach. Coach Greg Campy with us, Oakland University head coach. They're weird because early in the year, really, really talented. They have some length. They have the Lithuanian kids. They can score. But it seems like something in Big Ten play, something went awry for them. Can you put your finger on what Illinois' potentially is when it comes to the big dance?
Yeah, they have a very high upside and a really down low side. They jumped out about 8 to 10 point lead on us, and we kept it, 12-8 for most of the game. I think they ended up I don't remember, maybe they beat us by 12, but
12.
Yeah, we couldn't make a 3 against them, but they couldn't either. And it was kind of an ugly basketball game. And it's one of those tempo games. I think Illinois has to be playing at a really high tempo, and the ball's got to be going in for them. And when it does, they can beat anybody. They could beat Alabama, they could beat Auburn, they could beat anybody, but they also could lose to they won't lose to a 14 seed because I think, what are they, 7 or 8?
Yeah.
But they could. And I think it's frustrated Brad during the year. He shows it really well. I mean, he backs his players to the T. But I think he was a little frustrated, their inability to make shots. And that point guard they got from Europe, that kid's really good. And if he plays at a high level for 6 games, they could go all the way.
Yeah. And they have some size, and I think people use the injuries and the health for an excuse a little bit longer than we expected. And then that's when the kind of alarms went off that something's not right here with this Illinois squad. And then another team you face, Michigan State, you face them every year, it seems like. And Izzo's doing what Izzo does. You know him well. Before we get into his actual team, why is it this time of year his team seemed to ascend and hit a different gear than everyone else with Tom Izzo?
Because they're elite defensively and they're elite rebounding. A lot of teams are one or the other, but very few are both. And if you're elite on defense and an elite rebounding team, you're in the pressure-packed situations when it's all on the line and it's hard to make shots, and you're forcing them to make tough shots, you're going to win those games. And that's why he's done what he's done in his career. He's an elite defensive coach. He believes in toughness, and he believes in that. And at a Michigan State, he can go recruit that. There's a lot of coaches that believe in it, but being able to go and recruit it is another thing. And he can do that at Michigan State, and he's held true to it. He's also this year got a team he loves. I mean, just look at him. He just loves coaching this team. This is a vintage Izzo team. It's a team that, he can get mad at and scream at them, and they're going to react to him, and they're going to react positively to him. He can coach the hell out of them. And that's what he's good at. And that's why I've got them going to the Final Four. I do. I've got them. I don't know, they're the number 2 seed in their region. Auburn's number 1. Auburn's coming into the game having lost 3 of their last 4. And I did a TV show last night with an analyst, a guy that played in the NBA, and now he's an analyst. And I said that no teams, and he goes, yeah, but they lost to Florida, Alabama or whoever, and it's naming these great teams that they lost to. And I said, yeah, but they also were beating those teams a month ago, and now they're losing to them. I would have rather had it the other way around, where I would have lost to him a month ago. And I'm just not sure that it's a long, hard season, and you play with ebbs and flows. And right now, it looks like for Auburn, they're struggling with their flow. And that's why I've got Michigan State going to the Final Four.
I don't think anyone would second guess you there. Coach Greg Campy with us, Oakland head coach, helping us look at our brackets right now. VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. How about this bracket down in the West? The names of coaches that we have to deal with, right? All of the elites, it seems like we're all put in this area. We got Pitino and Self. And then I want to ask you about an up-and-comer, and that is Ben McCollum at Drake. And I'm sure in your circles, you've heard of him for a while. He was a Division II coach. I know Oakland at one point was in Division II. What can you tell a national audience about Ben McCollum, whose name's going to come up for the Iowa job, the Indiana job, and the job that he's done his first year at Drake?
Well, I'll talk to it from two sides. I'll talk to it from the good. I don't know him.
Yeah.
I've heard great things about him. Everybody that I know that does know him raves about him. You don't do what he's done unless you're a damn good coach. I don't care what level you are. You do not do what he's done unless that. I do think he's had a perfect storm in that what he did at the Division II level is unprecedented. There are some coaches that have done similar, but not anywhere near what he's done. He got the Drake job, and Drake won it this year. You can look at that from two ways. The first way you can look at, well, they won it the last 2 years too. DeBreeze had won it 2 years in a row.
Yep.
And now he comes in and wins it. And you can say, well, it's Drake. They've won it the Missouri Valley 3 years in a row. But the other side of that, from his side of it, is, well, he did it with all new players. That's impressive. And he brought his Division II. But having coached in Division II, I know how good the top teams in Division II are. The most fans don't realize or know. I know. I was there. All right. It is the national champion in Division II is going to win a lot of Division I games. So you say that, and then you look at who they played, and they've only, they've won. I think they played 2 Power 5 teams,
Yep.
and they won them both. But it's not like they played. And I'm not saying we're any good, but they didn't play our schedule. They didn't play a lot of guys' schedules, right? And so, the jury's still out on how good Drake is. I think they're good. I think they're like Indiana State last year, right? Indiana State kind of got screwed over and didn't get in, and then they went into the NIT and they got to the finals, and they proved to everybody they should have been in the NCAA tournament. Well, Drake got in the NCAA tournament because they won the Missouri Valley tournament. It'd been interesting if they lost, whether they had gotten in or not. My guess is they would have, with that many wins and 2 Power 5 wins. But who knows with the way that this is going this year? I mean, we were talking off, before we got on about the selection committee and all that happened. So it would have been interesting, but I'm glad it didn't. Although I love the Bradley coach, so I would have loved to seen him in. But it'll be interesting to see Drake in the NCAA tournament and how they perform and how they play. But guys, championship predicate or whatever that word is. He's done it over time. It's unbelievable what he's done, and I believe he deserves a chance. He deserves. I don't think anybody would be wrong hiring him. I think he deserves that chance.
VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Coach Greg Campy, Oakland, with us right now on the phone, and we're breaking down the tournament with him. Incredible expertise. Pitino in that same region down there with Drake in the West. So the knock on Pitino we keep hearing about the St. John's team is they don't hit their free throws. They don't shoot the three well, but they have Rick Pitino as the head coach. What does he do that makes this so unique that he's able to win at so many different stops along the way, Coach?
Well, I think everybody wants to answer that question because they'd want to mimic it, right? I mean, what he's done, and he has a lot of detractors too because of some of the stuff around the program and things like that. But it doesn't matter with him. He just goes and he wins. He just leaves. No matter where he is, he leaves a path of destruction as he goes through. And to do what he did at St. John's, It's pretty unbelievable, it took 2 years, to win a championship, and he didn't just win the championship, he won both of them. He won the tournament and the regular season. That in itself, especially in a Power 5 conference, is so hard to do. Power 6 or whatever they're called.
Yeah.
And, he's done it in different ways, but for the most part, his career has been up-tempo pressing and shooting. But yet this year they can't shoot and they win. Now I would tell you that, and the reason I don't have them in the Final Four is if we were just doing coaches getting people to the Final Four, I'd have them there. But at some point, it doesn't matter who the coach is, you got to make some shots. And over 4 games to get to the Final Four, if they have that night where they're not making threes, which has been the MO against them, then they're going to struggle to win that game. And they did not get an easy bracket. I mean, it's not easy for them. I like Michigan State's path to the Elite Eight way more than I like St. John's path to the Elite Eight. So they may prove, they could prove us all wrong and make all those shots. And I mean, he's a master. There's no question. No one will be surprised if they make it to the Final Four. No one.
No. Coach, give me your Final Four. Who is it now?
I got Duke, Tennessee, Florida, and Michigan State.
All right, that's perfect.
And Florida won me over with the SEC tournament. I would not have picked them. I got a chance to watch them a couple times in the SEC tournament, and I just, man, they bring waves of people at you. And when you can that's why I like Michigan State too. When you can bring waves of players at you, you can overcome bad nights.
And super balanced team. They're built for any style of fight. Golden's done an awesome job down there. So your Michigan State, Duke, Florida, Tennessee. Talk to me about the Tennessee pick coming out of the Midwest, because I mean, I'm sure in your circles, coaches hear this stuff. I'm sure they don't say it, but the media knock is like Rick Barnes when it comes to this time of year doesn't get it done. But it does feel like this team fits his style of wanting to grind it out, slow down the pace, muck it up. They're physical. They have a couple scorers right now. Why do you see Tennessee coming out of the Midwest region?
Well, they came so close last year. And he's been there before. He got there at Texas one year with TJ Ford, I think, was the point guard. Yep. And I think Rick Barnes is one of the best coaches in the game. And, you've got to have some luck, especially in bracket draws. And I think this is a good bracket for him. But more importantly, he's gotten there with defense in his career. This team can score. Last year, Dalton Connect, if he had a good game, they were, but they were a little bit challenged to score all the time. This year's team, those guards are really good. Those 2 guards, they can go get you points. They can come off screens. They can win 87-80, and they can win 50-55. They can win multiple ways. And I just believe it's his time. And I looked at that bracket and I thought, if he's going to do it, this is the year.
Coach Greg Campy with us, Oakland University head coach. All right, Coach, then what's the finals look like? Who is playing for the championship and who eventually cuts down the nets this year?
I got Duke, Florida, with Duke winning it. Now, if Cooper Flag's not 100%, then, obviously I would not have Duke. But when you do these shows and you talk about this stuff, you don't know what's going to happen. So you're talking about 3 weeks from now and anything can happen. If Duke wins it, then I'll look like I was smart. And if Cooper's injured and can't go, then I'm going to look like an idiot, which I'm pretty good at looking like an idiot. Hey. So I'm used to it. So no big deal.
Coach, I do it every day here. I do it every day, 7 to 10 p.m. Eastern. That's all I do is look like an idiot. I made a profession out of it. Hey, Patrick apologizes. So he pays all that rent, all those taxes to live by the beach in California and Los Angeles. He lost power. So he's not with us. He apologizes that he had to step away. He's working on getting his power back. But we always appreciate you doing this. Hopefully we're not doing it before the tournament starts next year, because we're doing it after you've won a couple games in it. So, Coach, thanks as always.
And I'll tell you what, if we're in it next year, I'll come on your show before it starts anyways. And I'll tell you who we're playing and how they're going to beat our ass. But we'll see.
Coach, thanks so much. That's Coach Greg Campy, Oakland University head coach, breaking down the bracket with us. When we return, I have 50-1 on St. John's to win the title, and I'll tell you why I'm a little bit concerned about that ticket. That coming up next, VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Meagher and Dustin Swedelson. Sweat your bets with VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Here's Patrick Meagher and Dustin Swedelson.
Uh-oh. Did Patrick lose power again? I don't know if we have Patrick. He can't hear me. Oh, no, again, he's got no power. Welcome back in. VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. I'm Dustin Swedelson. Patrick Meagher lives in a beautiful area of the country there by the Pacific Ocean. You can literally see it from his window, yet he pays a ton of money in rent. Like, you don't even want to know. And then his taxes are absolutely insane. I'm out here in Vegas. I got no state income tax. I'm pretty sure he gets like half his paycheck. But anyway, pays all that money to live there. He can't get his freaking power to work right now. So he keeps popping in the Zoom. He keeps connecting back to do the show, and we just keep losing him. So that is a bit of an issue here for us here on VSiN Live Mad Dog Sports Radio. But that doesn't matter. We have a lot to talk about, people, because the NCAA tournament, it's going to be absolutely insane this year. I already have like 12 bets all up at VSiN.com/picks. Go become a pro over at VSiN.com. You'll get everything we do there, the picks, the betting splits. We have so much to offer right now. The key is, though, you'll also get our March Mania betting guide. All you have to do, and you'll get it first month for $1.58. 30 days, VSiN Pro Access, $1.58. You'll also get a daily email with all the best bets from all the hosts, all the guests on the network. And it's just $1.58 if you use the code SIRIUS. So it's VSiN.com/subscribe. Use the promo code SIRIUS. I cannot emphasize this enough. You don't want to be Google searching every single matchup to figure out how to bet it. Our experts are so good at breaking these games down, condensing the information, and you'll get that March Mania betting guide for $1.58 using the promo code SIRIUS. All right, it's VSiN Live Mad Dog Sports Radio. When it comes to the March Madness, the vibes you usually get around this time of year are people looking for the trendy teams to follow. And as a contrarian here, I always get nervous when I find a contrarian pick, and next thing I know, everyone else is jumping on board. Is it part ego because I want to be the smartest guy in the room? Yeah, my therapist would tell you, yeah. Robin would definitely say that that's part of the problem here. But there's also something to the fact that a sneaky pick is no longer a sneaky pick when everyone else thinks it's a sneaky pick. And when we look at the board right now, when it comes to betting, when it comes to filling out your brackets, there are a few teams that I'm a bit nervous that everyone seems to be on. We touched on it briefly start of the show, but number 5 Michigan taking on number 12 UC San Diego. If you're listening to me right now and you watched more than 3 minutes of UC San Diego playing basketball in the regular season, raise your hand right now. If you're driving, keep your hands on the wheel. But if you're at home, raise your hand. I bet 10 of you raised your hands, max. And most of you probably went to San Diego. That's why you watch the school. None of us really watch this team. Sure, we paid attention this past week in the conference tournaments, but we weren't paying attention. Yet now we're all experts telling everyone UC San Diego is going to knock off Michigan. I mean, I'm one of the donks. I'm one of the people doing that right now. It's a little bit more about Michigan than it is about San Diego, but monitoring everything going on when it comes to like the KenPom rankings, all the analytics all season long, there was an interesting development that I noticed throughout the year, and that's every time I check their KenPom's overall rankings, I noticed that a school, San Diego, that not San Diego State, right, that we're used to seeing in the big dance, but UC San Diego was routinely ranked around major power programs like UConn, the 2-time national champs, like Arkansas, like Oklahoma, like teams that we knew were going to be a part of the big dance. So the analytics bear out that this San Diego team is different. And we just talked to Coach Greg Campy from Oakland, and he told you the formula. The formula is you can't try to run with these teams that have better players than you. You have to limit the possessions, and you have to be able to shoot the three. Well, that's two things that UC San Diego does well. And then when you look at the other side for Michigan, the issue the Wolverines have is they're so sloppy with the basketball this year. The turnovers are going to be their Achilles heel. And in a game with limited possessions and a team that can hit threes when maybe you're shooting more twos in your Michigan, things could get away from you. I went ahead and I bet UC San Diego plus the 2.5 points today. I love them. The problem is everyone loves them, and that always scares me in these types of games. Now, right below them in the South bracket, another matchup where I think Yale is going to be a trendy play. Yale a year ago eliminated Auburn. Auburn had major expectations to be an Elite Eight Final Four type team. And Yale, with Danny Wolf, who's actually on Michigan now, who we just talked about, they knocked him off. I think this year Yale's going to be trendy, but it's the wrong call. So Texas A&M is a veteran team. That's a big problem for Yale here, where they don't have Wolf, their best player, right? That is a little bit different for them, and the market tells you that. The market has A&M laying 7.5 right now. That total is 140 and a hook. But when I see this one playing out between the Aggies and Yale, I think the vet style for A&M, the vet roster for A&M, their defensive style, and having a coach that's pretty intense like Buzz Williams, I do believe that they get past Yale. I don't know if they cover that 7.5, but I don't see A&M being in a situation like Auburn was a year ago, taking on a team like Yale. Now, let's drop down to the West, where there's a ton of big-name coaches. We start with Dan Hurley over at UConn. Heard him on Shine on Sports today. He was awesome. Go back on the SiriusXM app. Check that interview out. He's awesome. He's honest. He's got bravado. He's got confidence. But I don't think UConn's getting out of the first round, people. Something's not right. Something's not clicking. And I don't think Oklahoma's all that good. But when you've won 2 titles and things aren't going right back to back, I'm not sure this is the time of year that this is a program that just turns that on. So I do have some concerns about UConn, despite loving Dan Hurley. Huskies are laying 4.5. Totals 148.5. From a betting perspective, strictly, I would take the 4.5 with the Sooners, because I do think they've had to play a lot of meaningful basketball down the stretch, and that's going to do them right as we head into this tournament. All right, I'll touch more on the rest of these teams, some of the matchups that jumped out to me. Some of the contrarian plays that I'm now concerned about have become public or popular plays. But let's head out to the phones, because one of the people who, I don't know how to say this, I've had an interesting relationship with over the years, has called in. I want to get his thoughts on what's going on in the NCAA tournament, because he only knows about one team, people, and that's Mike in the OC. Mike, you're on VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. What's up, buddy?
What's up, brother?
I don't know. You called me.
What on with you guys?
Do you have power? Because Patrick doesn't have power right now.
What happened?
I don't know. I'm sitting here in the middle of a radio show, and the guy's looking at me going, "I don't have power." So you tell me. You have power?
He doesn't have power in Hermosa Beach.
No.
He did this drop off because I'm coming on. Oh my!
No, believe me. No. If anyone was going to drop off because you were coming on, it would have been me. We both.
It'd be you.
So tell me, what do you want to talk about the tournament?
Great breakdown. Listen, UCLA got screwed on the seed, but no one gives a crap about that. Dustin, they beat Oregon twice. They finished ahead of Oregon. They beat They beat Gonzaga. They beat who am I missing here? Hold on, Michigan State, and yet they're a lower seed than Oregon. How could that be? Who the hell knows? I mean, this is crazy what went on this year. I mean, this is some of the worst seeding. The Clemson, we talked about the Michigan, but what about UC San Diego? Does it? People get UC San Diego confused with USD. It's not the same school. Now, do you know?
Yeah, it's not the San Diego that Jim Harbaugh coached at. It's a different San Diego.
Correct. Very good. University of San Diego is private. UC San Diego is public. They're Tritons. They went up to Division One. They went to Division One, 4 years ago? And this is the first year they could be in the tournament, right? They won 30 games this year in the Big West. They came out of nowhere. It's a hell of a story.
No, they're awesome. They're the types of teams. Yeah, they're the types of teams you look to back. But your Bruins, UCLA. I got to tell you, Mike, I don't like the draw. I don't like the draw. Utah State's going to be feisty, but the Mountain West tends to come up short this time of year. The concern would be in the second round. Look, you're going to take on a Tennessee team that wants to play the style you want to play, but they're actually better than you at it. That feels like the time UCLA saying bye-bye.
It's very up and down season for them, Dustin. Listen, they've had problems shooting, and sometimes they go on streaks and they just can't shoot the ball. That's if they don't get good guard play from like Dylan Andrews and Mack, they're done. They got to get guard play. They play great defense. Cronin has great defense, but McClellan's time of the year. We'll see if they can make another run. A few years ago when we got to the Final Four, but I doubt it's going to happen. One game at a time. You never know in this thing, man. You never know. You may get on that run right now. You never know. Watch North Carolina get on a run. Would that be funny?
No, I mean, look. No, you're right. You never know. I'll never count anyone out. Maybe that's my problem as a bettor, because I did do a little bit of housekeeping earlier today over at Dustin Swedelson on X. This is VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Normally with Patrick Maher here, and he's normally leading the way. However, he doesn't have power, so it's me solo right now. 888 Mad Dog 6 is the number if you want to get in. We can talk about your bracket, March Madness. Who's the sleeper pick? Who's become too trendy? What's your favorite bet in the opening round? But to Mike's point, anyone can do it come this time of year. We've seen it. Maybe not win the whole thing, but they can get to the Elite Eight. They can get to the Final Four for a long time, it felt like we were just holding on to George Mason. And then the last few years, we've seen other teams go on these miracle type runs. And as a bettor, as someone who likes to bet long shot futures, that's bet a little to win a lot. I did housekeeping earlier today, went and looked, and unfortunately, all I have is long shots. All I have is guys that are big tickets, starting with UC San Diego at 300 to 1. I have Drake at 300 to 1. St. Mary's at 150 to 1 and 125 to 1, which we can get into in a moment. Maryland at 85 to 1, St. John's at 50 to 1 and 30 to 1, and Texas Tech at 40 to 1. Is there a long shot out there on the futures board that you think is worth playing right now? Tweet me at Dustin Swedelson at The Rap Radio. What is the best long shot future play before these games tip off this week? We'll break that down next. It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
Now back to VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.
Hey, we're back. It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Dustin Swedelson, a little solo expedition for a little bit. Patrick Maher dealing with some power outages in Los Angeles, but up until I got a girlfriend about 5 months ago, I was very used to the solo expedition. Got quite used to it, and so this is not new for me here. Talking to myself, talking to the audience, figuring out a way to find a way to make money here in March Madness. And a guy that I know may have an issue with some of the comments out of my mouth last segment about UConn has called into the program. So UConn Al in Detroit, my friend, how are we doing? What'd you think about my analysis of UConn? Do you think that your guys can turn it on when it matters here?
They've been able to turn it on in the past, but it's one of those things, Dustin, right? Like, you always bet black, eventually red's going to come out, right? I mean,
I know.
Let's be honest. I know, dude. I know, too. So I think I disagree with what you said about Oklahoma. I do think they're going to get by Oklahoma and win that 13th NCAA game in a row, and then the wheels will fall off the bus. But you can never count the champ out until they're knocked out. Seriously, you can't count them out. On teams that I think are going to be overrated, I think Drake's going to be overrated. All right, I think that the sleeper to get through a couple rounds is Xavier from the Big East. Coach Miller's got them playing really freaking good ball. They've been playing great for the past month since they got Fremantle back, all right? And the one thing that kills me in my parting words here is I cannot believe Babchick flips from a UConn guy to St. John's because his dad graduated law school from there. Unfreaking real, dog.
His dad graduated law school like 40 years ago. How's he flipping now?
I don't even think he's watched a game in the last freaking 40 years. I think he still thinks Lou Carnesecca's coaching him. Rest in peace, Lou. But anyway, and by the way, Shine did an amazing job with Dan Hurley. The one thing that Shine, I got to say, throw in here, he's crazy to think North Carolina should be in there. He's crazy to think that they're Dustin.
No, look, there's no world where this makes any sense. The math isn't mathing, as the kids say here. North Carolina has no business being in this thing. I understand they're a name brand, but I think it's pretty consistent that over the years, this event is bigger than any of the teams. And maybe they'll get you a little bit of juice when it comes to the first round, right? The play-in tournament here for the first four. But I don't think UNC brings the eyeballs people are talking about. College sports are totally different. I don't think it's quite as big as people are acting like. I don't think it's going to make a difference when the rating comes out. Everyone who cares is tuning in whether or not North Carolina is or isn't in, and that includes North Carolina fans. North Carolina fans are still filling out brackets, even if the Tar Heels aren't a part of this tournament. So, but the numbers just don't compute. When you break down what West Virginia went through, what West Virginia did even post losing their best player in DeVries, I just don't see how they didn't get in. Last Friday, every single bracketologist said West Virginia was in 6-10 in quad one, whereas North Carolina went 1-12. Even Indiana went 4-13 in quad one. That's 3 more quad one wins than North Carolina. Quad one wins are the number one most important thing. If we're going to go total body of work and then start dropping it down to move the goalpost to get North Carolina into the tournament, that just doesn't compute for me. That doesn't make sense. They're 8-0 in quad two, but they lost a quad three game. Well, Indiana didn't lose any in quad three or quad four. And in fact, they have a better road win than anything the Tar Heels did, winning on the road at Michigan State and East Lansing. And then for West Virginia, in their case, they have a ton of wins. They won at Kansas. They won on a neutral against the Gonzaga team that gets up and down the floor as good as they ever have. Arizona, who has been a team playing a lot better in the second half of the season, beat them on a neutral, and they beat Iowa State, who's in the tournament. All of that right there shows you West Virginia should be in. I'd make the case for Indiana, and I'm not like Steve Torrey where you can claim I have some biases. I don't care about Indiana basketball, but he's been 100% right about this. The Hoosiers, outside looking in, should be in over North Carolina. It's not just one, It's two programs that should have gotten in over the Tar Heels. You want to argue about Boise State? I can't get all worked up over that, but I just think college basketball is not quite as popular as you think it used to be. And I think people are tuning in regardless of what name brand is in these games. The one thing that concerns me, though, when it comes to North Carolina is they now have a rallying cry. They can make idiots like me look really stupid because they can go on a heater. They could go on a run. They could win a bunch of games here and say, look, we told you we belonged. Maybe they were right, or maybe people like us gave them the motivation to turn it on when it matters here and to maybe advance to a Sweet 16. But it just doesn't make sense to me that North Carolina is in this thing. I don't think that's what this event's about. This event is about the little guy getting a chance at the big guy, especially the little guys that the big guy's scared to schedule when it comes to the regular season. So seeing North Carolina here, it's just disappointing. I mean, last Friday, they shouldn't get credit for that. I think that's the most frustrating part for me, is that North Carolina shouldn't be getting credit for beating a Duke team down two of their six best players and the national player of the year potentially in Cooper Flagg, the number one overall pick in the draft. How do you get credit for losing to them? You still lost. You were down big. You mounted a comeback. And I think a lot of that comeback came from the fact that Duke didn't know how to play without their go-to guy in the closing minutes when it mattered the most. And that was more about Duke than it was about North Carolina to me. I have not been impressed with the Tar Heels. I do not think they're special. And I did not want to watch them when all of these things were playing out in what is the best sports event of the year, especially from a betting perspective. It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. I'm Dustin Swedelson. We've still got a lot to talk about tonight. We've got MLB starting tomorrow. Did you know that? Did anyone know that? Does Rob Manfred know that? We'll look at that with Rob Brender coming up. Plus, more on who are the sleeper picks when it comes to your brackets. It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
covering the spread all night long. This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Here's Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.
Dustin Swedelson here hanging out solo right now. Patrick Maher dealing with a power outage in Los Angeles. It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio, 888 Mad Dog 6. That is the telephone number to be a part of the program, where I'm curious, as we're all sitting around filling out our brackets, figuring out who we have in the Final Four, who those key upsets are going to be in the first couple rounds. Curious, who are the teams you are targeting? Tweet me at Dustin Swedelson, at The Rap Radio, at Mad Dog Sports Radio. We will read those on the air as they come in, but also give me a call. I need some plays. I have like 12, but I could always use 15. Who are the sneaky plays? Who are people not going to be on? Is it Montana? Hear people talking themselves into Montana as if you've watched them play a single game this year, but that's what this whole time of year is about. High Point. I don't know what state in the union High Point is in, but I know I have them covering against Purdue. I mean, it goes back to my formula I mentioned at the beginning of the show. I'm sure they have an undersized white point guard who can't go left, who's just going to be an absolute disaster for the Boilermakers. And there's no chance, after finally getting to a Final Four a year ago, I want anything to do with Matt freaking Painter winning ball games in this NCAA tournament. But coaching is the theme, especially when you look at that West region. It's an absurd group of coaches when it comes to national champions, when it comes to NBA players and making deep runs in this thing. You have Rick Pitino, John Calipari, Dan Hurley, Bill Self, then a bunch of up-and-comers, Todd Golden, Grant McCaslin down at Tech, Ben McCollum, who has his pick of any job he wants, and Penny Hardaway, who recruits as good as anyone. You go in the bracket above them in the South, you've got Bruce Pearl. You've got Pat Kelsey, who's a big up-and-comer. Buzz Williams has been through this before. Chris Beard is a guy that a lot of people believe, pound for pound, could be one of the best X's and O's coaches in the country. So there are some intriguing matchups. And, of course, Tom Izzo is in that South region, which could set up a potential matchup in the Final Four, where we have Tom Izzo versus Rick Pitino at their ages, going at it for a chance to go to the finals, which is, I believe, is what Anthony in LA wants to talk about. Anthony, you're on VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
Hey, Dustin, how you doing, my friend?
Good, buddy. What's going on?
Well, I called you on Friday. I was the Mama Cita Madness guy. Got a few laughs out of you guys. Decided to call back in. This is your moment. I mean, I know it's like Anchorman, right? When Ron Burgundy wasn't available, Christina Applegate took the reins, and you're doing a phenomenal job, man, as the anchor here. So a couple things here before I get into the Rick Pitino, Tom Izzo. Going to respond a little bit to our boy Mike in the OC. I'm a University of San Diego guy, which means I was there during the glory years when we had Harbaugh and Josh Johnson. That's when we beat Gonzaga. And UConn Owls, UConn, we upset them in the tournament that year. Can't root for them, so I need a new team. UCLA, born here, live here. They write my ladies' checks. Hard to savor UCLA wins because the next day Mike and the OC is going to call every program with the same take every single week. So I don't know what to do in these tournaments. It is what it is. I guess he's going to call anyway, but I got to ask you, Dustin. Izzo, Pitino, you got it gun to your head. Who's going to make it further? Everyone talks about rooting for these guys. Pick one. Tell me.
Oh, no. Hold on, that's not even one. One thing I want to correct. Mike in the OC is going to call in whether or not he has something or not to say about UCLA. That's first off. Secondly, Izzo or Pitino, look, I obviously love what Rick Pitino does as a coach and what he does with his programs. He contends for national titles. But Tom Izzo's like all-time first team, most likable guys in all of sports. If you were to tell, and I'm not getting political here because I don't know his politics, but if you were going to tell me there would be one person in all of sports that I would want to become president of the United States one day, Tom Izzo's on my short list. So it's Tom Izzo all day, every day.
That's who you're rooting for, Dustin. I'm telling you, life on the line, though. Come on. Who are you going to pick?
No, I'm not going to the dark side. Anthony, thanks for calling in, man. Appreciate you. All right, VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. We're asking for sleeper teams that can make a run, teams that maybe are a little bit off the grid. And it looks like we're going to bring Patrick Meagher back into the mix here. I'm guessing the Power is not back there in Hermosa Beach. Patrick, you got me? I believe we have him.
Yo, you got me, dog?
Yep, I got you, Donk. What's going on? You fix it? Put the wires together?
We got a situation. Hey, listen to me. We got a situation.
Okay.
I got on the phone with Pep. Now, for people that are listening that don't know who Pep is, he's a gangster engineer in New York. Correct, Dustin?
Oh, yeah, and he knows more about New Jersey transit than anyone on the planet.
Now, I want to clear my name, people. It's on New York's end. It is. Listen, it's not on my end. I just got this message from Pep. Some of the New York studio codecs are down. It looks like New York. Nothing you can do.
Oh, you've been vindicated here. Look, full disclosure. You've been doing this from home for how long now? 2018?
3 years, and I've never had an issue.
And we were wondering what is going on. This is the first time ever you're having an issue. There's no bad weather. Duh, you live in Los Angeles. So, okay, this is not your fault at all. You cannot be blamed.
But let me just go through a couple of things. One, I've rebooted my modem 150 times in 10 minutes. Two, let's talk about, first off, tremendous job by you. I mean, all the credit. I know I messed with you, but let's give the big guy credit here, people. He has done an amazing job, and I appreciate it. But let's go through the irony. Campy's on the show.
Oh, dude.
It's the one conversation at this point in my life I want to have, and everything shuts down. What the hell is that?
No, so what I was literally thinking during that chat, well, I got to talk to him because he's the best human on the earth. But I was thinking about, I pitch you a lot of interviews as the producer of the show. I've made you talk to a lot of people you didn't want to talk to. I sat there with you at Angels Camp where you had to interview Mike Trout and stretch like 7 questions into 90 seconds of content. The only the only thing you care about every year is getting to catch up with Greg Campy, and you weren't able to do that today. I was so bummed for you.
Dude, I'm just bummed out. Like, I was into it. You did a great job with him, but I was into it. He likes us. He literally was calling us by our names. He said that, you told me, he said after, as you were saying goodbye, that if he makes the tournament next year, he'll come on before the first round matchup.
Yeah, maybe we hit him up again next week and have him on again. Make him our own like college basketball analyst here. That's what the big networks do anyway. We might as well use it because he's so nice and so good, and you could finally talk to him.
What a freaking debacle. You know what? This is a debacle. And you got Jim Root coming up at the bottom of the hour, so you'll be okay then. And obviously you're going to be okay now.
Well, it's the easiest day for this to happen. It's the easiest day for this to happen. It should just break down my bets and brackets.
But did you take a Mike in the OC call?
I did. And he sort of had a plan, but didn't have a plan. We got there eventually to UCLA, and it ended with a classic, well, what are you going to do?
Hey, did you play that clip where Torrey goes in on that vice chair yet?
You know what? Let's play that while you're on the line because you haven't heard it. Also, you didn't hear
I literally just want to hear it. Do you mind playing it while I'm on here?
Yeah. So, Nia, let's get that ready. We've got Committee Vice Chair Keith Gill. So, for those who don't know, with North Carolina being on the bubble, and the head of the committee was UNC AD Bubba Cunningham, he's not allowed to be in the room while they deliberate and come up with who's in, who's out when it comes to the national tournament. So Committee Vice Chair Keith Gill, he's then in the room, he's in charge. And this is how it sounded when he went on Mad Dog Sports Radio's Selection Sunday special with Dog and Tori and talked about North Carolina.
All right, Keith, outside of UCLA, did North Carolina, and I'm asking, not telling, did North Carolina beat anybody else who's in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, they
don't.
Yeah,
who they beat?
They did. They beat American. And
come on, Americans in the play-in. Keith, don't give me that one. Give me a good team. Did they beat a good team outside of UCLA all year?
Well, first, I answered the question that you asked, which was.
Well, that's not, I'm not looking for American Keith. Now, be fair. I'm looking for a quality team in the tournament who's not in the play-in. Did they beat anybody?
Understood. I certainly hear you. And that North Carolina does have a strength of record that we thought was really solid. They beat SMU. They beat Dayton. When you're talking about teams in the tournament, I get it. That's a factual thing. That's why I brought up American. And certainly those are the two teams that they beat that are in the tournament. However, when you think about it, they're 500 on the road. They played 9 quad 1 wins above the line. Their strength of schedule, non-conference strength of schedule is 5th in the country. Their overall strength of schedule is top 50. And that's where the committee ended up. And certainly we recognize that there may be people that disagree with that. And certainly sounds like you're one of those individuals.
Yeah.
From the committee standpoint, we took a look at their record. We compared it to the other teams, and we felt that they deserved that last spot.
All right.
The strength of one more follow-up, and appreciate the candid responses, but one more follow-up about the strength of schedule. Granted, I mean, they tested themselves. No doubt about it. They played some of the top. I mean, 3 of the teams they played are 1 seeds. So I get it. Florida, Auburn, Alabama, which was a game they lost at home. But they lost all of those games. So, I mean, are we valuing just the fact that they scheduled, or are we losing the overall view of eventually you need to beat some of the teams that you scheduled on that level? You follow my skepticism on that one? Yeah.
No, absolutely. Winning games is important. I mean, I think when you look at the process, Saturday night we came to our last vote, right? So we put the last 4 teams in the field. We had a contingency vote that North Carolina ended up winning that vote. And so what that meant was if Memphis won, there would be an additional at-large spot in the field, and North Carolina would get that spot. And certainly if UAB had won, then North Carolina wouldn't be in the field. It was really close. And from the committee standpoint, when they looked at the full body of work of North Carolina, particularly they had success in quad 2 in terms of those wins. And there's some good wins there, but they played a really challenging schedule. And at the end of the day, the committee felt like, they should be in that contingency spot. And then when Memphis won, they had an opportunity to enter the field.
That was Committee Vice Chair Keith Gill on the Sunday Selection Special with Mad Dog and Tori. Patrick, I heard you giggle. I giggled too. Did you take any of his answers to mean anything?
Dude, I was giggling because I was uncomfortable.
I mean, there's no defense.
That was so freaking awkward. And I give Tori and Dog so much. Dog has entered a phase in his life as far as a broadcaster where he's got so much FU equity that it's a game for him at this point. Like, he knows he's bulletproof and he deserves it. They absolutely mutilated that man.
They mocked him to his face.
And Tori followed up with a question. That was the same question.
He said, hold on.
You know what's fascinating about it? As I'm listening to that answer, I'm like, who would ever agree to be on one of these committees and be a talking figure for one of these committees? Because you're going to sound like an idiot. Because that guy, I'm sure he's a wonderful person. That was an idiotic answer because he had no answer to give.
No. He's using the talking points that we don't even know which side he fell on when it came to voting, but he's just using the talking points he's given. But how about the balls when Chris says, who have they beaten that's a tournament team? And he actually says American University backing him out of the freaking Patriot League. That's when we got off to the wrong foot and he was going to get hammered.
But then he goes to letter of the law. You literally asked me a question and I gave you an answer. There's no nuance. We don't care about American University. No offense. I love America. The university stinks. Okay. So this concept that he's going to give us American. Hey, has anybody brought up the fact that your boy Bubba gets paid if his team gets into the dance?
Oh, you know what? You didn't hear, because that's when all your stuff went down. You didn't hear the full Bubba Cunningham answer when they had him on the selection show yesterday. So we should probably play that. Nia, let's cue that up so Bubba Cunningham, you alluded to it, because North Carolina has made the tournament as the athletic director. He's the head of the committee, but he gets a $104,000 bonus for his team making it. And their big defense is that he left the room when voting happened. So we're adults. We're supposed to believe the guy who's their boss, who's overseeing this entire committee, he leaves the room and he has no sway just from his regular existence as a human being as the boss here. He doesn't influence them in any way.
This is why I tell you off the air all the time, we have the best jobs in the world, because this is so stupid. And it's grown men, Bubba being one of them, you and I being two more, Dog and Steve being a couple more, that are pretending, because all of this is legit pretend. My man gets paid if his team, 6 figures, if his team gets in the dance, he says, I had nothing to do with it. I walked out of the room, and we're supposed to be like, cool. That's the best.
Yeah. Now, there are some people out there going, well, technically after taxes, it's $52,000. But, you know how it goes. Let's hear from Bubba Cunningham
Okay, yeah. I haven't heard this yet.
When Dog and Tori, they did a good job of holding his feet to the fire. This is the conversation about North Carolina being in and a team like West Virginia not making the big dance.
The injury to DeVries is one of the factors. Player availability is one of the things that we take a look at. And they had a few great wins early in the year when he was eligible. He had a great year all year long. They did, even without him. But ultimately, when the final decision came by the committee and the voting was done, they were just on the outside looking in. And it's really disappointing for any team that doesn't make the field. And, West Virginia, Indiana, Ohio State, Boise State, those are the 4 teams that didn't make it. Carolina wasn't in until the Memphis win and ended up being the extra team in. So
but DeVries got hurt in November. They played a full schedule without him. They won 10 league games. They won at Kansas. They beat Iowa State, who's a 3 seed. I mean, I would hope that you guys didn't kill the team's season. Those kids on that team who played 3 months without that player, and you said, well, you know what, the player's out, so we're not going to put him in the tournament, because that's not fair. You can't have that team play all year, and now you tell me, well, they're not going to make it because DeVries is out. That's not a fair thing to do to that team. Hopefully the committee didn't do that.
No, that's not what happened at all. They had an outstanding year, but we also know that a couple of the wins early were when he was eligible, and they were 13-10 after he went out.
That's Bubba Cunningham trying to defend the situation of his school, North Carolina, making in when he's the committee chair when it comes to the NCAA tournament. Yesterday on the Selection Sunday show, Tori and Dog did an awesome job. So now that you've heard it, Patrick, how do you feel about the Tar Heels being in this thing?
Honestly, that was equally uncomfortable.
It was bad.
And the indignance in Dog's voice is proper. Like, you could tell he's disgusted, but it made me think, like Chad in California called earlier, and he brought up Florida State from last year in football. While I was listening to that answer, it literally just crystallized to me that this is super goofy and something else has to be done then.
But it's apples to oranges, right? Isn't it apples to oranges, though?
Or, hold on, let me just say this. Or you tell me what you think. Or the fact that we've now played the clip 3 times, the fact that North Carolina it's a blue blood program. It's going into the tournament with people paying attention, wanting them to lose. Florida State last year led off first take. Is this all good?
So you're saying it's not about the actual decision. It's about us talking about whether the decision's good or bad, because it's just attention on the event now. Because I guess you're right. Had they just put Boise State in, had they just put West Virginia in, had they just put the rightful school who we all believe deserve it, we wouldn't be talking about that last spot. But because they decided to put a controversial team that they knew everyone already didn't want to see, they just got themselves 20 times the attention they ever could have anticipated had they just done what they were supposed to do and do the right thing. It's wild.
In a past life, I dated a chick that was on a dramatic TV show. Do you know what the producers constantly said? We need more drama.
Yeah.
Whether it was manufactured whether it was real, didn't really matter. They needed drama sells. So that's where we sit right now with North Carolina being in the tournament.
You know what? Give me that, though. Let me know this is all a marketing ploy. Be honest with me. Don't act like – because it's – look, I thought the question by Chris, and also very weird to hear Chris, who's normally not pro players. He's normally pro, like, owners and coaches and all that, tends to defend them. For him to say those kids playing 3 months without that player, without their star, I thought that spoke volumes to where we're at in this whole situation.
Yeah, I thought that was just the brilliance of Chris. He was using the kids as a shield to get his point across.
Yes. He
said, no offense, but he doesn't care about the West Virginia players.
No, he doesn't. He doesn't. Now, I would say this, though, with North Carolina. I just think we're all going to look like idiots because we just gave them the motivation that they needed to play like the basketball team they're capable of being. So in the end, they may have the last laugh here.
One thing I would caution, Hubert Davis is the coach.
That's
and
fair.
One of his players just had a line violation when the season was on the line.
You know what? It's a valid point. That is a valid point. So obviously coaching wasn't one of those parameters the committee was really looking into to make sure this team was worthy of being in the dance. But look, you've heard it all day. Everyone's heard it all day. I think it bears repeating. 1-12 in quad one. They had one single win in quad one, whereas West Virginia had 6, Indiana had 4. I don't even care that it's just like if it's West Virginia versus UNC is one thing, but Indiana, I think their resume is actually better than North Carolina, Patrick.
Look, if they beat a Cooper flagless Duke team, I don't even know if they're in.
No.
They lose to them because they're donks on a lane by the way, I don't even agree with the lane violation call, but letter of the law, like the committee says, and when we were watching it live, we had a guess. We were trying to figure out where the point went for the made free throw.
Yeah.
So this is, I mean, it's wild. But when you have people like, who's that crazy guy, John Rothstein?
Oh, yeah. National travesty or something like that?
Yeah, he's calling it a national I mean, people are so, but that only ups the drama. That only adds to the theater. That's the bottom line.
Yeah. And you're right, though. The comparison with Florida State, they're just following the rules that were laid out by that college football playoff a year ago, where all everyone did was debate whether Florida State would be in. Kind of using Florida State. It's old school NCAA tactic, right? Using the college kids as a way to garner attention, to make money off of them by pulling them out, holding them out of the playoff. But let's be real. Tucker DeVries, he's awesome. You and I have actually followed him his whole career.
He's awesome.
Because we happen to have the Drake coach on his dad years ago when he was still a recruit, and Darian DeVries was coaching Drake at the time. So we've known about Tucker DeVries for a while. But in no way, shape, or form can we compare the best basketball player on a solid basketball team in the Big 12 to a quarterback on the ACC champions in Jordan Travis. That doesn't compute for me at all.
I totally agree. And you know what else this does? Because you set it up perfectly. These organizations, the NCAA, they have been taking advantage of these kids for decades. This should erase anybody's suspicion about NILs moving forward. Because if they're going to puppeteer and screw these kids might as well get paid.
You know what? That's also another factor as well. Because I could be wrong about my take on the TV ratings, but I do believe it. I don't think all the North Carolina fans in the world were tuning in to these basketball games regardless if their team was in it. The whole world is. They're filling out brackets regardless. I don't think it makes that big of a difference. Maybe there's a chance they're right, and that fan base is bigger than I think, and it does impact the ratings. I guess I'd say for their defense, the one argument they have against me is it's certainly a bigger fan base than Boise State. So the goal is to get TV ratings in the first 4.
You might be onto something because, and look, I still love sports, still love college sports, but it's all been ruined. I think most would agree that it's been ruined to some degree. And Luka, I like the Lakers now. I hated the Lakers growing up. but sports have become so transient, and this concept of like you said, does North Carolina mean today, ratings-wise, what they even meant 10 years ago? There's no chance. Dean Smith ain't walking through that door, dog.
No. The fan bases are not the same. The passion's not the same, but they're not tied to the players anymore. We were talking about Louisville earlier and why I think they're interesting. They're interesting because their three best players were playing somewhere else a year ago. Like, that's the best teams go get the best players now. There's no build-up over the years. You mentioned why you hate the Lakers. You're a Pistons fan. You grew up a Pistons fan. You hated the Lakers because they were a team you had to get past. They were the elite of the elite. You hated the Bulls growing up because you had to get past them. There was a buildup when it came to these teams year after year. There's no buildup in college sports anymore. There's no getting over the hump. If these teams or players specifically go on a run in March and they're not at a premier program is going to pay them in the offseason to come over. And we've kind of lost that growth year by year by year. It's instant gratification. The guy at Fairleigh Dickinson got fired after 2 years today at Iona. He made the title game, but it wasn't enough for them. That's the world of college basketball we live in.
Hey, by the way, you got to take a break. You got your guest coming up, not to host over a phone. You're doing a great job. But you break, you get a hold of Jim Root. You guys will have a great conversation. Let's everyone give Dustin Swedelson at Dustin Swedelson props for carrying my ass today. Great job, big guy.
Well, for once, you didn't have to do an extra leg day carrying 315 pounds of me on your back. So I appreciate you. Thanks for calling in. And we'll do the whole, hey, you don't have to do any prep for tomorrow. You're good to go.
Hey, by the way, pretty professional. Jacob answered the phone, and I go, hey, Jacob, put me on with the big guy, because we've got a situation going on here. He goes, I'm in a good mood. My girlfriend said she likes me.
Oh, thanks, Jacob. I'm just out here doggy paddling in front of America. Thanks for the backup, bro.
Dude,
All right.
my man paused from putting me on with you so he can let me know that Amanda likes him.
First of all, if Amanda's listening, Jacob has another girl too that he's texting also. He's got like 5 or 6. He's got a roster. So we're not just talking about college basketball
he's got jump
rosters.
offs all over the place.
Jacob's got women everywhere, including ones he met at the strip club that he doesn't want to talk about. So Amanda, if you're listening, you're not the only one.
All right, I'll talk to you.
There you go. That is Patrick Maher, the normal lead host of this show. I'm Dustin Swedelson. It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Jim Root from the Three Man Weave is going to join us in about 10 minutes. But when we return, I have a team going to the Final Four that people are going to tell me I'm crazy about. But the reality is no team got a better draw based on the style of play that they like to go and do. We'll discuss that team and why I have them getting to the Final Four next. It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson. live betting reaction to all of the night's action. You're tuned in to VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio. Here's Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.
Well, the voice guy's half right. Dustin Swedelson here, riding solo because Patrick Maher dealing with some power issues, hanging out here on one of the best days of the sports calendar, the full day where we get the brackets, we look at all the matchups, we figure out how we're going to be smarter than our friends and hopefully win some money. And speaking of winning money, VSiN's got a really cool new March bracket challenge out right now. Go to VSiN.com/contest. You can see all the rules on it, but the basics are it's free to play. Don't we all love free 99? You'll make 40 picks against the spread or on totals over the course of 6 NCAA tournament rounds for a chance at $5,000 in prize money. Participants will earn points based on correct picks using Circus Sports Lines. The number one overall grand prize winner, $3,000 in cash. Second place gets $1,500. Third gets $500. All of that available to you. The contest opens Tuesday at noon Eastern time. All you got to do is sign up at VSiN.com/contest. And more on trying to win money is you want to learn about some of these teams. You want to learn about some of these matchups. I have a feeling not all of you were locked into Alabama State and their regular season play. I imagine you're going to need some help with Montana and some of the other teams like High Point. Well, if you go to VSiN's YouTube page, you'll get breakdowns of all of the NCAA tournament games on the board right now. It's youtube.com/VSiN Live. Our team is all over it all the time. So to help condense your workflow, to help you figure out who are the teams to monitor, we've got a great group of college basketball bettors and analysts that follow this all season long. It's youtube.com/VSiN Live. Dustin Swedelson here. The show is VSiN Live. This is Mad Dog Sports Radio, where before we went to break, I mentioned I have a Final Four team that is way outside the box. And I do have a habit of trying to be a little bit too smart when it comes to these things. But when I see a draw for a team in the style of play that they like to play with, I think things shape up really nicely for a team like St. Mary's. I know it's a weird one. You all talk about Gonzaga every year, but St. Mary's is actually better than Gonzaga this year. I know Gonzaga won the league, but St. Mary's got the best of them in the regular season, both at home and on the road. I think this St. Mary's team is super dangerous, which is why I bet them to make the Elite Eight at 5-1. Also have big tickets on them to win the title. I don't know if they get there and win the whole thing, but you couldn't ask for a better draw in their little portion when it comes to their part of the East tournament, because right with them, first of all, they'll take on Vanderbilt in the first round. I think they beat Vanderbilt. They're the 7, Vanderbilt's the 10, and they're favored in the matchup. So they get past them, then they have Alabama. What did we learn from Alabama and their colossal loss by like 20 points against Florida over the weekend? That 3-point variance is a real thing. Well, what does St. Mary's do best? They take away the 3. Defense is elite across the board, 44th in the nation defending the 3, 12th against the 2, 14th in effective field goal percentage, 8th in overall defensive adjusted efficiency. This is an elite defensive team. Randy Bennett's been there before. They're super long on the perimeter. I think they can limit not only the 3-point shooting for Alabama, but dictate the pace of the game with how they want to slow things down, take Alabama out of their element. And if those threes don't fall, the Tide will be in trouble. Well, then potentially in the next round, there's teams like BYU they could face. They could face Wisconsin. I have them facing VCU. That may be a stretch, but I do like VCU similar to St. Mary's because they defend the perimeter. But BYU and Wisconsin, both great at shooting the 3. BYU is the team that's more reliant on it. And I think Wisconsin having to play the way they did down the stretch in the Big Ten tournament, I have some questions about their energy levels, their travel. I believe they're going to Denver, getting used to the altitude. I have a lot of concerns about Wisconsin duplicating what they just did in a sprint in the Big Ten tournament, now on short rest, playing in this NCAA national tournament. Also, BYU, Houston showed you the recipe. Defend them, get in their shorts on the outside, and if their 3's not falling, they really don't have a second counterpunch. Because of that, I have St. Mary's advancing to the Elite Eight. And they could get Duke, maybe Dana Altman, who's one of the great tournament coaches out there. Maybe he knocks off Duke if Cooper Flagg isn't healthy. I think we're all just penciling Duke in there, and I think that makes a lot of sense. But we all know sometimes when it seems so obvious in this event, the opposite tends to happen. It's Costanza. It's opposite day. St. Mary's, if somehow someone else knocks off Duke, and it's a big ask, I could see St. Mary's with their style of play, with the 3-point dependent, high variant teams in their bracket in the East, being the team to represent this region, at least make it to the Elite Eight. I love the Gales this year. When we return, one of the best when it comes to breaking down the college basketball world all season long is going to join us. You've heard him every Monday. The three-man weaves Jim Root joins us next. What does his Final Four look like? We'll discuss on the other side of VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio.
This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson. Now back to VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.
It's VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Dustin Swedelson riding solo right now on one of the best sports days of the year. I mean, fill out your bracket. Tell me why you like your bracket. Have conviction in your picks. Who's going to the Final Four? Let's take some chances. By the way, if you're old enough to vote in this country, you are too old to have more than one bracket. I'm sorry. It's just not okay to be an adult, to be someone who makes real world decisions and have multiple brackets. And if you have trouble filling out your bracket, I suggest become a VSiN Pro right now. You'll get your first 30 days of VSiN Pro access for just $1.58. All you have to do is use the promo code SIRIUS. That's SIRIUS. Plus, you'll get our March Mania betting guide that's coming out, access to our exclusive betting splits to sharpen your edge, and a daily email with all the best bets from hosts and guests. And one of those guys, who's a frequent guest over on the main network on VSiN, is our next guest here on VSiN Live Mad Dog Sports Radio. That's Jim Root. He is of the Three Man Weave and The Athletic. You can find him over on X at Second Chance Points. And when it's a day like this that's so big, where we're breaking down so many games, Jim, you're the number one guy I want to talk to here. So for you, this is Christmas morning. This is when it all comes together. All those hours of watching MAC action and watching teams like Alabama State and High Point in November and December. So when you look at your bracket and you see an opportunity for sleeper picks and the rest of the nation is on teams that you've probably followed, like Drake and San Diego, does it get you a little bit nervous about some of the sleepers out there?
Yeah, I get a little hipstery. I'm like, hey, these are my teams. How dare you infringe on my territory? But I really should be sharing and enjoying that everybody's finally celebrating the beauty of these mid majors. I do have a problem with it though when I'm filling out my bracket where I can fall in love with any underdog. Yeah. And then I pick too many and my bracket gets destroyed early. I have been awful at bracket pools for years and years, despite this sport being essentially my life. I'm going a lot more chalky this year. I maybe it'll work, maybe it won't. But as much as I love some of these mid-majors, and a lot of the best teams did win their conference tournaments, which set up a strong group of 12, 13, 14 seeds, I think the top of the bracket's really strong too, even like the 4s and 5 seeds. So I'm going a little chalkier, especially late in the tournament, and even somewhat in the early rounds too.
It does feel like a top-heavy year. It does feel like there is a kind of line of delineation between the teams who really can win. I think there's about 20 teams that can go to the Final Four. I'd say maybe, I don't know, 6 or 7 that can actually win a national title. If you were going to look at this, especially from a betting perspective, right, we look at the futures board. Florida shortened up a ton after winning the SEC. Duke's plus 320, Florida plus 380, Auburn 4-1, Houston 6-1, and then it gets a lot bigger from there. Is there anything in a futures market that you think is worth looking at right before this thing gets going?
Nothing especially crazy to me. I mean, the Florida odds taking off, I that would have been a team I was in on. I almost wish they'd lost in like the semifinals of the SEC tournament to where they wouldn't be such a darling. And, you know, like everybody in ESPN's picking them. They won the SEC tournament in rather convincing fashion. So it's been trendy. Maybe a Texas Tech future where the value swung so far to Florida in that region. I picked Texas Tech to the Final Four in the preseason, and they're sitting there at 7th in Ken Pom, and it sounds like McMillan and Darian Williams are going to be healthy enough to play and hopefully really contribute. So Red Raiders are a team I'm looking at and have been looking at all season. And if you want to go against the Florida shine that's out there right now, maybe that's one way to do it.
I've got them 40-1 to win it all. You can basically get that number right now. So I bet it like a month or two ago. So if you're interested in that, you can get it. Now Jim Root's with us, Three Man Weave. The big talking point here on Mad Dog Sports Radio and on VSiN as well today was North Carolina getting into the tournament. From our perspective from betting, well, I'm looking at them now as 4.5-point favorites in the first 4 games. Totals 142.5 against San Diego State. I don't think they should be in. I'm curious your thoughts on that, but I do believe now that they're in, we all just gave them the greatest rallying cry to turn this thing on and figure it out. Do you think Hubert Davis's squad is capable of doing that, starting with the first 4 against San Diego State?
Yeah, I definitely do. It does feel like this is almost annual tradition. The team that like gets into the first 4 and everybody's like, why are they here? Goes on a nice run. I think about the UCLA team that went to the Final Four. I think they lost their last 4 games of the regular season and conference tournament. And then they go to the playing game, they beat Michigan State, and they get all the way to the sport's biggest stage. Jim Boeheim had a couple teams do this at Syracuse where we were frustrated they made the tournament, and then they run to the Sweet 16 or the Elite 8. UNC is capable of doing that, and I've had a hard time with the matchup against San Diego State I think that one could go either way. But I love the matchup for them against Ole Miss if they get there. Ole Miss is very ball pressure, switch everything, force you to play isolation. And UNC is great in isolation. They do it a lot, and they've got multiple guys that can score that way. And they take care of the ball. They're not going to cough it up with like the way Ole Miss needs. So if they are able to get by that tough rim defense that San Diego State has, I think they're definitely live against Ole Miss and can make a little bit of run in that bracket.
And now the reason we have North Carolina in this tournament is we didn't have that many bid stealers this year. Last year we had 1 million of them. That's why a team like Indiana State was held out, even though we all wanted to see them. The one bid stealer we did get was Colorado State. They go on a run, win the Mountain West Conference. They're taking on Memphis down in the West region, or over in the West region, I should say. And you actually like Penny Hardaway's squad in this matchup. Tell me why.
Yeah, I just don't think they should be an underdog. And I get it on the surface. You know, people look and see Colorado State's higher rated at Ken Pom. They're higher rated at Bart Torvik. All right, let's make the line. Analytically, that's where they should be. But Memphis is so low because they're terrible against bad teams. Like when they're laying 15 points, they win by 5. When they're laying 20 points, they win by 5. Like they just don't pull away, and their numbers get, you know, kind of jaded by that. But when they're playing up against good teams, they're awesome. And they played an incredible non-conference slate. Penny Hardaway really tested this team. If you filter Bart Torvik for top 50 competition, Memphis ranks 25th. Colorado State ranks 100th. They were bad against really good teams, despite that late surge. I think Memphis is the better team here, should be favored, even with the Tyrese Hunter injury, you know, limiting their backcourt a little bit. I don't fully expect him to play. I think Haggerty and Dane Danger are just going to be big-time matchup problems for Colorado State, and I like Memphis. They're getting points.
Love it. VSiN Live, Mad Dog Sports Radio. Dustin Swedelson here hanging out with our guy, Jim Root, 3-man weave, The Athletic at Second Chance Points over on X. Looking at March Madness, looking at some of these numbers that jump out, Jim just gave us one bet, Memphis plus 2.5 in the opening round. Another one you like is interesting, just from a coaching perspective. We've got Clemson taking on McNeese State. And the Tigers of Clemson laying 7.5, totals 134.5. But a year ago, everyone's flavor of the week this time of year was McNeese State. Again, a team none of us watched. We just looked at the numbers. We knew they had Will Wade as the head coach. But what I think is fascinating about this matchup is it's not just Will Wade, but Brad Brownell, the Clemson coach, also rumored for some jobs out there. Curious how that impacts the game. But from a betting perspective, what are you going to do with this one?
Yeah, and you mentioned if Brownell's rumored for jobs, you know where Will Wade went to college? Clemson.
Clemson.
So if he wants to backfill that his alma mater, perhaps that's it's going to be something interesting here. But I like the under. I think this game is going to be slow. Clemson presses, but purely to slow the game down. Like they don't even want to turn you over. They just want to get you later into the shot clock, force you to take a tough shot at the end of that clock and force it over the top of their defense. McNeese is similar. They'll kind of gamble a little bit more for steals, but they have a really long defensive possession length, which means they're getting you into the shot clock and they're going to make you work for it. I think we're going to see a bunch of possessions that last 20, 25 seconds, get up right against the horn there, and the pace is really the biggest reason here. But also, Clemson's kind of a shell on defense. They make you make shots over the top. That's not McNeese's biggest strength. They have a couple shooters, but they really want to get to the rim, get on the offensive glass. And I think Clemson can negate that with their size and their big-time veteran experience. A lot of guys that went on that Elite Eight run last year.
Well, let's move to a 4-13 game where the winner of this will take on Clemson or McNeese, and you've got Purdue and High Point. And honestly, I'm surprised by this line. I don't know anything about High Point, but it feels like a very respectful 7.5 to them here. Purdue's laying 7.5, totals 153.5. How are we going to play this matchup in the opening round?
Yeah, I'm going the other way here with the over, under and 1, back to the over here. I'm actually surprised that this has not been bet up, just because both of these teams are so much better offensively than they are defensively, and I think they've both got routes to scoring. High Point's defense is really vulnerable to a great ball screen guard. They play drop coverage and let you kind of have space around the free throw line. Braden Smith's probably the best player in the entire country at that, like pulling up from the elbow or pulling in some help and kicking out to shooters, finding his guy Trey Kaufman-Renn rolling down the middle. I think he's going to have a monster game. Purdue's going to score at will here. But on the other end, High Point's a top 25 offense. They've got a bunch of great talent, down transfers. They pulled out some NIL last offseason and have like 12 guys capable of playing at this Big South level. They really get downhill. They're athletic. and Purdue's rim defense is awful. Like one of the worst in the country, including mid-majors. Like they have no shot blocking. I think High Point can score at the bucket. I don't know exactly whether this pace will get up and down. I think it could theoretically, but mostly this is just a bet on efficiency. I think both teams will score really frequently against the other defense.
Yeah, I love that one. I'm going to fade Matt Painter this year after he finally broke the curse when he had Zach Edey to protect the rim a year ago. He finally got to a Final Four. So I'm happy to fade him. I might end up taking High Point despite not knowing anything about them until you opened your mouth just now. He's Jim Root, 3-man weave, the Athletic college basketball writer at Second Chance Points over on X. So when it comes to paths, like that's always the key here when picking our brackets, picking our national champions. When Patrick's Power was on, he felt Duke had the path he liked the best to get to a national title. I think Houston in the Midwest, I really like the way that they got a draw, and I just think they're so elite on both ends. They're my pick to win it all. When it comes to path, who jumped out to you that you like them to go on and make a deep run Final Four national champion?
Yeah, if Houston hadn't gotten Gonzaga as their 8 seed, I think I would agree. It's just like a bummer that they could be only like a 4-point favorite in the second round. I'd probably go with Duke. The one I would say, I think Florida got by far the hardest region. I think
the coaches down there are crazy.
Yeah, great coaches. They're 2-seed rocks. They're 3-seed rocks. They're 4 seeds incredible. And like you look in Duke's region, Alabama's dealing with the Grant Nelson injury. Arizona has 12 losses in the Big 12. I don't know how much you trust Wisconsin. I like them this year, but some people probably aren't quite on board. I think Duke's got that great path simply because I don't fully buy Alabama's defense. They just got to get Flag healthy, and I think they can probably get through the first weekend without him, even if they don't need him against Mississippi State and Baylor. I think Duke could be fine, and then I'm just not that scared of the elite teams, the 2s, the 3s, the 4 seeds in their region.
All right, national champion. Who's cutting down the nets when this thing's all said and done, Jim? Who's your Final Four, then who's cutting down the nets?
I'm frustratingly stubborn to my own preseason predictions here. When I had my preseason Final Four was Auburn, Texas Tech, Houston, and Gonzaga. Obviously, it can't be all 4 with Houston and Gonzaga lined up against each other, but I will stick with Auburn despite some of the downward trends they have towards the end of the year here. I'll stay with Texas Tech, even though I'm terrified of Florida. I think Houston gets out of their region. And then I'll go with Duke. So yes, 3 1 seeds and a 3 seed for my bracket, relatively chalky. And I will stick to my preseason title pick, Auburn over Houston. Tigers got to refine that joy. They're not playing with the same kind of pizzazz that they did for quite a while in this season. But if they can rediscover that, playing in Atlanta in the South region in front of some great fans there, big-time Auburn backers, maybe that's where they find it. And on the other side, I think Houston gets some revenge against Duke after losing in the Sweet 16 to them last year.
All right, then real quick, because I started the show with this, none of us have watched UC San Diego. I know you have because I asked you about them a month ago, and I still haven't watched them since then. Everyone's picking them to beat Michigan. I bet it already, and I don't care that it's a public play. How legit is San Diego versus Michigan in round 1?
Sign me up for the public on this one. I think it's a great matchup for them because they can pressure and just force copious turnovers. They're top 5 in the country in forcing turnovers. Michigan throws the ball away. And they mix in a zone, which I think will help negate the incredible size that Michigan has. Those 2 7-footers could be a problem, but the zone will keep them away from the bucket. And UC San Diego can shoot over the top. Name to remember is Tyler McGuy. He's not Jack Golke, but he's close. He'll take 12 or 15 threes in this game going over the top. And if he makes 7 or 8, that name is going to be remembered in households after this round.
That's what we're looking on. Someone to go on a heater now when it matters the most for us. He is Jim Root. He just went on a heater, and he's going to do it every Monday with us throughout the tournament. So these Monday spots with Jim are going to be very profitable for everyone. Also, just a great time because he's all over college hoops. Find him on X at Second Chance Points. Read him at the 3-Man Weave and at The Athletic. Looking forward to doing it again next week, man. It's going to be fun.
Yes, sir. Enjoy the games.
Yeah, enjoy the games. It's finally here. We're finally getting this thing. It's like we got some juice with college hoops. And I normally am not someone who follows college basketball as much as I have this year. Part of it is because at VSiN, I've done more hosting on the weekends. And because of that, there's been live games going on. So I've been more locked in than usual. I think that's actually a bad thing for my bracket. I think I'm potentially going to have the worst bracket of all time. But I'm sure a guy who's going to break down his bracket and has a bunch of really good plays when it comes to the NCAA tournament is our guy, JT the Brick. Don't go anywhere, people. He's coming up next on Mad Dog Sports Radio. For Patrick Maher, who didn't have power, for our guests Greg Campy and Jim Root, I'm Dustin Swedelson. We'll see you next time.
All night long. This is VSiN Live on Mad Dog Sports Radio with Patrick Maher and Dustin Swedelson.